finding a little idea in secondary lines. This worked wonderfully in his semi-final against Wesley So and proved effective once again in the present game. The adversary revealed afterwards that the idea 12th bishop f4 had been found and analyzed by one of his helpers. MVL took several subpar decisions which eventually provoked his loss. In the post-game interview, the French thought that the natural 13th knight c3 was already inaccurate. Instead, black should try the bold capture of the pawn on d4, where chances to hold a draw are very good. In the game, after 14th d5, Vachier-Lagrave chose knight a5 instead of centralizing knight d4. This might have been the turning point, as things went from bad to worse afterwards. He had failed to spot the strong intermediate move 19 e takes f6, which left his positions in ruin. Mamedyarov had no trouble increasing his advantage and forced resignation on move 28. Vachier-Lagrave finds himself in an unpleasant must situation, but he will certainly try everything possible with the white pieces. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Riga. Welcome to FIDE World Chess Grand Prix. Inevitably, every tournament comes to an end. So 16 players started to play in Riga, started the second Grand Prix 2019 stage. With every round we were losing half of the players, and now it's only 2 in the final. And today, well, it's a last day for sure for the classical part. That's a last classical game to be played today, and might as well be the last day of the tournament.
Right, I mean, for Maxime, definitely it's not going to be an easy task, because he needs to be victorious today and needs to find a way to beat Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, who has been improving his game over this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, the only player undefeated.
Right.
Who remains undefeated in this tournament. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave today has the white pieces, and yes, very, very hard task of beating his very inconvenient opponent, we can say. It's 7-1 in classical chess in favor for Mamedyarov.
Including the yesterday's game?
Including yesterday's game. So, well, yeah, he has to win in order to keep his tournament and our tournament going, to drag it to the possible playoff tomorrow. Shakhriyar only needs a draw to secure his victory in this Grand Prix Riga. So a couple of minutes before the start, I believe once again we do have the special guest to make a first move. And let me find who is going to be today. Yeah, well, apparently we are waiting for the guest to make the first move. It will be Yuri Sratsevich, the executive director of Riga City Council.
Right. So, yeah, a high representative from the local municipality, and he's going to make the first move. Well, is he late?
Well, could be. Well, that's an awkward situation where, well, yeah, players are there, but the celebrity who is supposed to make a first move is late. So let's see what the decision's going to be. I think here he is. Yeah, it was perhaps too early to start. Yeah, now that I'm checking the time, it's 3 p.m. sharp here in Riga. So, well, the signal will be given by a chief arbiter, and we will start the final classical game of Riga Grand Prix.
Yeah, so the players greet the guest of honor, and I wonder what move is he gonna make. I mean, it doesn't really matter in terms of how the game actually will proceed. Again, A4?
Is it A4 again?
No,
it's B4. Well,
that's new.
Well, that's perhaps new for this tournament, but ironically, that was the move Sergey Karjakin made for Fabiano Caruana when he was invited to World Championship match in London.
Right.
Yeah. So E4, of course. Yeah, I was thinking a bit of what to expect in the opening, and we all know that Maxime's normal opening, so to speak, is 1 E4. And perhaps Mamedyarov is not the type of a guy you are not happy with E4, because you have a lot of players playing the Berlin, a lot of players playing the Petrov. Mamedyarov doesn't do any of those.
I mean, okay, he has played Petrov before, but not so much really. He's more a principal player. And there's actually the first surprise. I mean, Maxime goes for the quiet Italian. I would have expected for him to go for the Rai Lopez. And I mean, who knows? Perhaps he feels that at this moment to play the Berlin is not the greatest choice.
Well, maybe Mamedyarov wouldn't play Berlin, but I'm not even sure. Well, the thing is, however, I remember a game between those two from Grantchester last year, where Mamedyarov went for two knights defense instead of playing bishop c5, and he was doing it quite a bit, like going knight f6, white usually plays d3 in... white usually plays d3 nowadays after knight f6, and then he was going for some peculiar setup with h6, d6, and then opting for early g5.
Right.
So maybe Maxime was expecting this, but the normal Italian, of course, was as well prepared, so-called gioco piano, the quiet game. Let's see how this game develops.
I mean, this only proves that he is there for a long fight, because normally if these guys, one of the top players in the world, they play quiet Italian, it necessarily doesn't mean it's a peaceful approach. It is a very long-term approach to fight for a long time, and I believe this is actually what we are going to see. I mean, there are so many ways trying to improvise in the Italian, and I wonder which direction he's going to take.
A lot of positions, indeed, which are possible to play, even though they might be objectively equal. But yeah, the game doesn't really fizzle out immediately, like in many sharp lines, in fact.
Right.
Like we can imagine, like Maxime playing with black some very sharp knight against bishop g5. And then if white knows his theory, black knows his theory, yeah, it seems 25 moves of sharp chess, and then, oops, it's a draw by repetition. Here you don't have such options very often. So white can try to get some, some very flexible position and try to play it on.
As you can see, Shakhriyar has chosen a very safe approach. I mean, obviously, he's not going for the bit more aggressive d7, d5 move in one go. He played h7, h6, although, I mean, not often it's necessary, because in many occasions, black voluntarily allows for white to play bishop c1 to g5, but this is just to be sure that nothing spectacular will happen in the opening, and
that's an interesting moment indeed. So that he started to play with h6 even before castling. So I'm not sure if it's still not a surprise for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. I thought at some point it felt like Maxime's going to slow down a bit. Not really. So he is still in his book, as well as Mamedyarov. Now it's a time, I believe, to decide for black. Will he play with a6 or a5? And Mamedyarov went for a5. So you have to prepare for white's initiative on the queen side. And sometimes it's just a6, intending to put the bishop on a7. But kind of a modern trend is to play it with a5, to play in a bit more aggressive manner. This is what happened in our game.
Yeah, this is quite a popular continuation. Recently, black doesn't play the classical approach, which was, at least some time ago, playing a6, then retreating with the bishop on a7, and presumably moving the knight from c6 through e7 to g6, but at least practice shows that white is holding some kind of advantage in those lines. So a5, some ideas, followed by either a4 or even potentially queen b8 is quite an interesting and challenging approach.
Yeah. So knight d2, white does not react to a5.
Well, there are a couple of continuations. The most popular move is bishop p6, which is already instantly played.
So they still continue, well, within their comfort zone. They probably know their opening quite well. So before we proceed into analysis board view, let's take a look at some graphics that was prepared by our technical staff on what are the players, or what were the players playing for. So once again, a reminder on what's the prize fund, and the total prize fund is 130,000. Yeah, that's the overall prize fund for each leg of Grand Prix, and then 280 is awarded between those who scored the most Grand Prix points. So in this particular event in Riga, elimination in round one, so it was As I said, we lost 8 players in round 1. So those who got defeated get, well, €5,000 and 0, regrettably, 0 Grand Prix points, then 8,001 Grand Prix point for those who lost in the second round. Semi-finalists get 10,000 and 3 Grand Prix points respectively. Runner-up will end up with 14,005 Grand Prix points plus bonus points for the runner-up, whoever it's going to be, because when you win the match in classical time control, you get 1 bonus point. And interestingly enough, the only 2 players who ever won a match in classical time control, they played in the final.
Yeah, and it only makes sense. I mean, they were the best players throughout this tournament, and it's no wonder they are in the final. And what does it make? I mean, assuming that if Maxime doesn't win today, so that would mean extra 3 points for him?
Yeah, so he will end up, imagine Maxime loses today. I mean, loses the match ends today, so Maxime doesn't win. It makes 5 Grand Prix points for him, plus 3 bonus points. So essentially it's going to be 8 in one single stage. Like the winner who would win all the matches on tiebreak.
Right. If my memory serves correctly, was it the same score also for Jan Nepomniachtchi, or was it 9 points?
Well, for Jan in Moscow, it was 9. Right. He won the whole tournament, but he only won 1 match in classical chess. So for Jan, the winner of Moscow Grand Prix, it was 9 points. Yeah, and the winner is going to take 8 Grand Prix points as the winner, plus some bonus points, well, none less than 3, interestingly enough, yeah?
All right, so in any case, we probably will have a new leader in overall standings, because Jan Nepomniachtchi is not playing it, unless, I mean, Alexander Grischuk has earned how many points?
Alexander Grischuk gets quite a lot, I believe, so he has got 7 in Moscow. He's runner-up and he won 2 matches, plus he won 2 matches here, so he's getting 3. He's going to be on 10, if I'm not mistaken.
And Shakhriyar, he definitely wants to win this tournament because he lost in the first round of the Moscow Grand Prix, essentially earning 0 points for overall standings. Yeah. And this is so important for him to win.
Well, for Shak, it will be crucial, right? If he doesn't win this final, then, well, it will be very, very tough for him to qualify for the candidates. Winning this final, that's, of course, another story. That will be quite a big result. So, A5, I think we start right here, right? Or maybe before that, let's mention that Black has started with H7, H6, avoiding any Bishop G5 nonsense in case of a castle. Rook E1, castle short, H3, A5. So that's once again a point where Black can choose between A6, kind of a more classical way to play it, or A5. So A5 played, knight BD2, Bishop E6, and to be honest, I've never ever understood and probably never will, when you play Bishop E6 and you're ready to take with the pawn, when you need Rook E8, you know. So here Black says, I'm fine going Bishop E6, if you take, I just take back with the pawn happily.
Because if I understand correctly, for those typical positions, it is quite important for White to get the space advantage in the queen set. For example, I would be happy to exchange an E6 if I could proceed with B4, A4, securing some kind of space advantage.
Let's imagine Black has played A6, White does the same, Black does the same. Right, then White probably is happy taking there, going B4, Bishop A7, A4, right, potentially Queen B3, sometimes B5 disturbing this knight. Yeah, this is considered to be like favorable for White. While after A5, at least Mamedyarov tries to say, yeah, I don't really care. Bishop E6, if you take, I take. I have my space on the queen side as well. Therefore, Bishop B5 is played. And Black replied with Queen to B8. And I believe I had seen this position. And, well, if I'm not mistaken, there were games with Bishop takes, pawn takes, and some D4.
Right. And what is quite interesting, that this position has been played before by both players with White. Because Maxime has played this position at least once in the Paris Grand Prix rapid tournament back in 2018, when in this position, instead of the knight f1, which is by far the most popular choice here, he played rook e2, which probably is not the main move.
Kind of a funny move, like preventively defending the f2 pawn.
I'm not sure what is the big idea behind it, but
yeah,
I mean,
well, perhaps, yeah, like if black plays queen a7, I have this pawn already defended. So that was a quirky move he has tried to play. Now in our game he went with knight f1. What are the other options for white?
Yeah, and like you mentioned before, the other real option for white is actually to take on c6, bishop takes on c6, b takes, followed by d4, e takes, c takes, bishop, wherever it goes. There have been a number of tries, so let's say...
b4 to b6, yeah?
Yeah, so let's say bishop b6, for example, on something like knight f1.
Knight f1 now, so white is trying to get knight on g3, white has the center. White potentially has some ideas on the queen side, on the king side, like bishop e3, queen d2, sack on h6. But at the same time, black's position is solid enough, two bishops, and usually black does quite well in this line.
Yeah, and you would have expected that Maxime actually will go for this, because this leads to some kind of unbalanced position and potentially some chances for white to complicate matters. But apparently, Maxime just felt that Shakhriyar is well prepared in this line and black is doing quite fine there, so he decided, okay, I'm going to play the positional approach.
Not forcing matters at all. Knight f1. Okay, so now, can black continue grabbing space on the queen side and just play a4?
Probably, although I think the standard idea usually is a4 to play when you have the bishop on d7, and there are some ideas sometimes to sacrifice the exchange. Can you do it now? I'm not so confident.
a4, no, well, my big point was that if you take here, it's bishop f2 or queen a7. Yeah, probably queen a7 is just a better move, yeah.
Yeah,
attacking the bishop and f2 pawn. Yeah, well, I'm not sure though if I need this move. If you switch back to this idea of capturing on c6 and playing d4, it might be just a tempo loss, this a4.
Yeah, but a4 runs under d4, I think.
Yeah,
I'm not missing
there is
anything.
Also a4 d5. Yeah, d4 d5. That's the threat essentially after knight f1. Yeah, completely forgotten.
Yeah, so this is why everybody plays.
That's why knight e7. Yeah, so that d4 is no longer that scary, and a2 a4 was played. Oops.
Oh, something. Did he play knight e7?
No.
He played queen
Wait
a7.
a second. No, knight e7 was not played. So queen a7 first.
Right.
Well, we missed quite a series of moves. Queen a7, yeah, talking about this, standings and stuff. Queen a7 attacking the f2 pawn, bishop e3, trade here happened, and only then black went for knight e7, where white replied with a4.
Well, perhaps I think it's important to know that Shakhriyar has played this line himself with white last year in the Norway chess against Sergey Karjakin, and he chose to play here rook e2, this supposedly strange move
after
I
queen
mentioned.
a7,
after queen a7, he played rook e2 against Sergey Karjakin, and then the game proceeded as a4 for black, knight g3, queen a5. So essentially, I mean, white is forced to take on c6. Black really wants white to force to take on c6 so that he opens the b file, and after the trade, knight h4.
Knight h4, so he decided not to go for d4, but knight h4,
for some reason.
Trying to get this knight to f5 maybe, and once again having some ideas on the queen side, sacrificing f2 e8.
Rook f2 e8, now comes the second surprise move, rook e1 goes back.
Back to e1.
And after king h7, queen f3, white was trying to conjure something at the king's side, but I mean, the minister of chess defense, he remained solid, and there was nothing to be done. I mean,
yeah, so it was a draw essentially.
It was a draw after like 10 moves from this position, and so at least Shakhriyar definitely has some experience here from both sides, and both of the players are perfectly familiar. But what I would like to mention that after queen a7, the 12th move here, there are a number of options. And Maxime played, what did he play? He played a4.
He played bishop e3.
No, he played bishop e3. That is one of the most popular moves. The other moves is rook e2 or queen e2. So,
defending the f2 pawn, which is attacked, yeah.
Right, and after bishop e3, there's the exchange of the bishops.
Bishop takes, knight takes, yeah, knight to e7, a4.
All of this has been played before, knight e7, a4.
And there are still games of decent players there.
I mean, such a very decent players as Magnus Carlsen himself.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, who played it back in 2017, although it was a rapid game against Dingleren in St. Louis. And the game proceeded after a4, knight g6, which is, I believe, it's not on the board, as far as I see. Something else was played.
Shak has played rook a to d8.
Yeah, but in that particular game was played knight g6, bishop c4, bishop c4, knight c4, and I would essentially call this quite an equal position. Perhaps white has very minimal advantage to push the d4, claim some space advantage, but it is very, very little, and black is super solid.
Yeah, it's like in such positions you shouldn't be fooled. Like white does look a bit more active. Yeah, but the problem for white is that whenever you play d4, let's say black does something. Like whenever you play d4, takes, and it's awkward to take with the pawn because black always has d5.
Right.
Black always has d5 with this knight on c4. You will have to take. Knight takes. Black is getting very solid position with knight on d5.
Well, and I have to mention it that Shak played rook a to d8, and guess what?
That's a novelty.
That's a novelty, right? There you go again.
So once again, Shak is first to bring up some surprise here.
I mean, perhaps it doesn't really matter because this position is so quiet that this move, rook a to d8, is not going to sensationally change the evaluation of the position unless it comes with a new idea.
Yeah, let's try to figure out what this new idea could be. Bishop to c4 played, and I could think of some d5 maybe. I mean, that's the only kind of the only justification of putting the rook to d8, that you want to play d5. But how does it work? I don't really see it.
Well,
so takes, pawn takes. I thought we take with one of the knights, and then it seems white can safely take the pawn, yeah?
Yeah, so it would seem.
Yeah.
But I think there's another idea of this knight e7. I'm not sure if this is correct, but perhaps Shak is postponing moving the knight to g6. I mean, he just wants to trade the bishops, and then return to c6.
Ah, you mean...
Perhaps that is the idea, because...
Takes, and then at some point...
Yes,
like
because it would make white's task to play d4 quite difficult, because then you can just exchange the pawns and you gain the square of b4. That might be the whole idea. I'm not sure, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but...
Yeah, well, it actually makes sense to get the knight back to c6 as well. In such positions, it could be that queen is getting on c5. The point being that at some point black gonna have a tactic of taking on e4 and then playing d5.
Right.
So let's see. Yeah, bishop to c4 played. I assume black might want to take on c4. Otherwise
just a double pawn, and it's not sure for what you're suffering really.
Yeah, rook d8 then makes not a lot of sense. Yeah, if you.
Well, but essentially, I do not believe that this opening choice can be called a success, because black is not in any trouble. I mean, not by any margin, at least in the beginning, and he has no weaknesses and nothing really to push for. And okay, I mean, this is what Maxime chose, and probably he is happy for this, but
yeah, it doesn't look so promising.
Doesn't look very promising at all.
Yeah, well, the examples of successful opening ideas in this tournament would be both semi-final and final white games of Shakhriyar Mamedyarov himself, right? When he was able to pick up this certain line, which is sort of not the most popular, well forgotten, and bring a surprise there. And in both cases, it worked very well for him.
Yeah, but I mean, still yesterday, Maxime, in the interview, he said that he's going to play no matter what until the very end, and definitely he is not going to agree to a quick draw after unsuccessful opening. I mean, I'm not saying this is an unsuccessful opening, but it doesn't strike me as a complete success, to be honest.
Yeah, so we cannot say, okay, now he's getting chances. Not yet. Not yet. But yeah, the position is still playable, and there might be still some problems to solve for black. So once again, takes. On the other hand, I mean, if white is cautious, if white doesn't really give black a chance to play early d6, d5, there might be a long, long-lasting game, and then let's see what's going to happen. Yeah, but so one more time with black. The bishop on c4 is not yet taken, but the feeling is like you really want to. So takes, and what did we say? Knight
I think so, knight c6. Because I'm looking at the other games played in this line where everybody else at the top level especially, they were playing knight g6, and then presumably white gets some kind of a play going on at the queen side. I mean,
yeah, well, actually we can check the game.
Right.
We have the game between Karjakin and
Svidler. Right. I mean, after knight g6, so perhaps we can draw some
knight g6,
similarities?
Yeah, there could be some parallels, right? Bishop to c4 seems to be the staple idea for white.
Right. I mean, the bishop on b5 is doing nothing anyway, so bishop c4 takes, knight takes on c4, rook f2 e8, and now comes the idea. Queen b3, queen c5, I don't know, maybe queen b5 was possible to play immediately, knight e3, queen c6, and queen b5.
And queen to b5.
And maybe because of this, there might be some chances for white to create some weaknesses at the queen side. It's not much, really.
Yeah, but let's say if black takes, if black cooperates to fullest degree, like taking here, playing b6, then yeah, then it is somewhat uncomfortable situation for black potentially, because whenever you move the knight appears on d5, attacking the c7 pawn.
Right, and essentially the knight on g6 does nothing because you can limit his activity by playing a simple move g3, and it's just doing nothing, so he has to be rerouted probably to c5. I mean, knight of
yeah,
fate.
maybe this knight via f4, e6, c5, yeah.
And do something there. So I assume this must be some part of home preparation, but what surprises me slightly is that Shakhriyar is still thinking.
Well, I think he came up with a few moves. So bishop c4, takes.
All right, it's been played.
Yeah, so he has taken on c4. Now he's thinking again.
Well, it might seem quite equalish position, but probably it is not so simple, because white can try to create some threats with this aforementioned maneuver, queen b3, queen b5.
Queen b3, queen b5, yeah. This probably is somewhat annoying. And once again, no obvious counterplay for black. Unless, that's the other version. What happens if black is trying not for d5 but for f5? Because d5 is very hard to materialize. Your e5 pawn is attacked twice with the knights, plus if you play d5, the rook is getting open. So before playing d6, d5, black will have to spend a lot of time defending the e5 pawn.
Right.
Yeah, so could it be that one of the knights, let's say this knight goes to, I mean, no, precisely this knight, but to one of the squares, so let's say goes to d7, for instance, and then black is looking for f7, f5, and at the same time, for instance, I have a very acute answer to queen b3, I have knight c5, and then maybe knight gets to e6.
Well, perhaps this knight d7 forces for white to play d4.
Yeah, maybe white is more comfortable playing d4 after the knight leaves, yeah.
Right.
And then when black takes, still I believe taking with the pawn is not that attractive, but it could be that white takes with one of the pieces with the knight, or possibly even with the queen, sort of offering the queen straight.
I've seen such typical positions among the top players before in the Italian. Might be a game between Wesley So against whoever he played. He had a similar position with the knight on d4, then strengthened the center with f3, and also black included d6, a5. But I'm calling it from memory, because I also play myself Italian with white, and I've seen these games quite a lot, and definitely it looks familiar.
Yeah, it's so confusing. You have to agree. I mean, when you try to memorize those lines and some tiny details, which, well, if you don't know the position very deep, you just don't understand what's the difference. Having the pawn on h3, having pawns on a4, a5, or a5, a6, but they all matter much. Well,
I can only come to one conclusion. I mean, definitely Mamedyarov was not exactly 100% sure he is going to meet Italian today. I mean, he had to prepare something. I mean, he didn't have too much time. I'm sure he used these 2 days and his seconds, they used these 2-3 days from the semifinal to final to prepare something, not only for the first game, but also for both games. But
yeah,
I think he was concentrating more on the Ryan Lopez. So probably this was some sort of a preparation until rook a to d8, and it should stop at some moment.
Yeah, and then you think, okay, I'll pick it up. After all, the position is not that complex, and at some point I will have to start playing at the board. It's not like I can prepare the Italian till draw. Yeah, simply no way you get the chance to simplify the position that much.
I mean, knight c6 is a big decision. I really was imagining this is the difference between not rushing with the knight on g6 and perhaps Shakhriyar is having some second thoughts. Should he move the knight to c6? Because, I mean, the question is where his counterplay. I mean, if you put the knight on c6, what do you do afterwards?
Yeah, let's say white, once again, doesn't play d4, but goes for some sort of queen b3.
Yeah, so I cannot really imagine for black playing d5.
Once again, maybe wants to put the knight on b5. And it's kind of tough for black. I mean, it's like nothing really, no threats, but at the same time, like with every move, you have to make some decision, yeah.
Right.
And then again, if black is trying to get the symmetrical structure, if black is trying to put the pawn on c6, then his knights are not that great placed, yeah?
And he has some sort of weaknesses at the queen side.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a way, it's a symmetrical pawn structure if this knight is on c5, yeah?
Right.
But yeah, like knight on e7 is not doing that much as well. And this is so c6. I'm not saying that this is the move you play. It's just that, yeah, well, technically it's the same structure, so shouldn't be a problem for black. But yeah, in fact it is, because the knight on c4 is much more active than the knight on e7.
And perhaps we can also very quickly show yet another game. I mentioned this game between Magnus Carlsen and Ding Liren. I just did not show how it proceeded when the knight was on g6. And essentially, the world champion executed the same idea.
After a4?
Right, after whichever move it was, already lost it. a4, knight g6, bishop c4.
So same, one more time, same position, bishop takes, knight takes.
Queen a6 was played in the game, so Magnus limited the knight's options on g6 by playing g3, rook e8, queen b3, knight f8. So black is trying to bring the knight into action, queen b5, knight e6, and d4. So, at least visually speaking, I would say that white is claiming at least some sort of little advantage. And after e takes, c takes, queen b5, a takes on b5, b6, black looks solid, but white holds the center. And this was the game which ended in a draw. It was a rapid game between the world champion Magnus Carlsen and the Chinese #1, one of the best players in the world, Ding Liren. Well,
yeah, the final position does look pleasant for white. Yeah, okay, maybe not like much, but
definitely something to fight for. And I believe this is generally the main concept of queen b3, queen b5, creating this weakness on a5 that you can potentially target, or some targets at the queen side.
Yeah. So, well, perhaps then we can rule out all the other ideas for white, like d4 is unlikely. Attacking on the king side, it's like nothing left to attack with, even if white by some miracle manages to bring the knights somewhere here. Black can play g6. Yeah, it's like knight on e3 or knight on h4. Black seemingly safely can play g6 if we think that the knight returns to c6. So white, perhaps, on his next couple of moves, he will use those moves to play queen b3 and queen b5. And especially since the rook left from a8, right? So that queen b5 will, in fact, attack the a5 pawn. Queen b5, yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about this position, maybe at some time white might have access to the move b4. For example, let's say, black would play something standard like knight g6, for example.
G6,
I just was having this idea that white might play b4, forcing probably to exchange the pawns, and then supposedly grabbing some
a5,
space.
b5, just trying to get more and more space, and as well, some, well, I don't know how to make it, but once again, like d4, e takes, queen takes might be an idea. Yeah, so essentially this represents the A and B pawn. Those represent potentially a dangerous pawn on A file.
Yeah, but Shakhriyar did not play this, and he played knight d7. Your suggestion?
Yeah, so he went for knight to d7. Well, maybe not necessarily with f7, f5 idea, but he's ready to meet queen b3 with knight c5. That's a good thing, right? Because queen b5 drops the pawn on d3, so you don't really want to play queen b5.
I think it's a smart waiting move. I mean, he's not exactly defining his setup, and he just wants to see what is white going to do, because d3, d4, it changes the structure and the dynamics of the position very much. It forces the matters, and I'm not sure if Maxime really wants this. Well, perhaps he should, anyway.
Yeah, perhaps he should go for d4, and, well, depends on his feeling. I mean, if it is a favorable moment, because it's hard to say what could be the further preparation for this move, right? I mean, as we said, we would probably like to have the queen on b5, and especially if we can force black to react to this, like playing b6. Yeah, queen b3 so far runs into knight c5.
So I would imagine that white needs to abandon this idea, at least right now, and either play d4 or perhaps something along the lines of b4. I don't know. I mean, maybe b4 is still possible.
b4 could be a move as well.
Could be as well, but then again, black can probably yet again
takes,
but perhaps f5 as well.
Maybe, f5, but at the same time, like since the b4 pawn is hanging, could it be? I don't know, d5 you just take immediately. Yeah, because I'm still looking for, which would be a normal way to respond to some flank activity. So to break in the center, and then, for instance, here, potentially the d3 pawn is weak, but yeah, white seemingly takes on e5. There's just an extra pawn. Yeah, that's not so attractive. I mean, black still gets some sort of compensation, like.
But you don't want to go there if you're not sure.
Would you? Yeah, why would you give a pawn? So maybe f5 indeed. Yeah, maybe f5 here, and then we have quite a sharp game all of a sudden. Yeah.
Yeah, because black has some counter chances at the king side, and white pushes forward the pawns at the queen side. I don't know with what move. b5 I think would be more sensible, because a5 is met by c6. I'm not. Oh, there is no c6, right? I mean, perhaps
maybe
a5.
a5.
Perhaps a5.
To
right.
stop all those tricks. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, b4 definitely, at least from the strategical point of view, looks interesting. And another choice is d4. I just don't see anything else here, really. I mean, what else do? You can afford to be too slow, because black is also seeking for a counterplay with the move f7, f5. So it's either d4 or b4.
Yeah, and well, this black doesn't really care, just can play f5 anyway, yeah? Can play f5 anyway, if he wants, yeah.
Right, probably.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel right to go knight h4 in this position. Yeah, so d4 would be my guess here.
So perhaps this is what white should do. Let's say, I assume that Shakhriyar needs to take, because if he doesn't, what can you do? Yeah, and Maxime played, I think, either d4 or b4. I did not see which move he played. There was a pawn thrust forward, so it's d4, right?
It is d3, d4, and now we'll actually see what's the planned reaction to
so
this.
Let's imagine, I mean, black does nothing. He sits and does nothing. He plays something like knight c6. So essentially in
trying to provoke d5. Yeah. What's this position? That's an interesting question. Like,
now you push
d5
forward.
and then we just go back.
And
right?
b4? You have to play b4,
and
I would imagine?
Perhaps you play b4, black takes, let's say white takes.
And f5.
And f5, yeah. And I don't know. I mean, maybe it has something to do with me being a King's Indian player, but I believe in black's position here.
I also believe in black's position, definitely. It doesn't strike me as a dangerous position, but still, I mean, I'm just trying to find ways for white to continue. Perhaps this is not the way.
Here, it's like, I mean, first of all, white has to decide how to react to f5, but potentially, if, let's say, nothing bad happens on the king side, and white is able to play a5 and then b5, then this knight will jump to c5 once again, and maybe this this far advanced pass pawn won't be that scary for black. So at least optically this looks like quite an interesting position for black to play. So knight c6 seems to be an option, yeah? So
that is a very serious option, although black voluntarily loses 2 tempi by doing this, but it's not clear that white can actually benefit from this.
yeah, but once again, by Keen's Indian standards, you do not necessarily like the inclusion of a4, a5, yeah, for white. Because normally it would be knight e3, and you would want to move this pawn and then break with c4, c5, which is not happening.
And black would have this terrible bishop on g7, which does nothing.
Which is not, yeah.
which is not there, right.
It's not there. So once again, I mean, it's speculative evaluation, yeah, but by Keen's Indian standards, we can say that black is doing more than fine.
I mean, knight a6 is the safe choice, I would say. What else is there? He can take on d4 and then play knight c6.
Yeah, we can try to do this, just to take on d4 and to see how this position unfolds. If black can equalize somehow by force, maybe he has all the reason to do so. So c takes allows d5.
Probably.
Well, yeah, looks like. And then this, well, the queen is a bit offside on a7, but you know, this stronghold on d5, potentially this knight to f6, this knight to b4, looks quite solid for black.
Looks
yeah?
solid. Probably white is perhaps even slightly better to some degree, but it is going to be very difficult to try to capitalize because, I mean, black is super solid with this knight on d5.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking not d5, but knight c6, but knight c6 perhaps is more challenging.
Still to put it on b4.
Yeah, that was my idea, but I don't know, maybe it's not really great because, I mean...
then the question is, white does something like this. Let's say black puts the knight here, and some position, yeah, knight d4, for instance. If you go knight c5, white plays rook a3, and all of a sudden, you know, some kingside initiative might materialize. Rook to g3, knight to f5, and those pieces there are nice squares, but a little bit far away from the kingside. So
yes,
I would actually prefer to strike in the center immediately.
Especially given into account the tournament situation that Shakhriyar needs only a draw. I mean, definitely he's such a great player and he adapts what is required from that particular moment. If they would play in an open tournament, I mean, in one of the first rounds, he would just probably go for a much more ambitious approach. I mean, today he just needs to make a draw. So if he has a choice to play solid or play wild chess, I mean, it's quite obvious what he's going to choose.
Yeah, so, but what I'm thinking that queen d4 might be a bit more challenging, because I don't quite see the comfortable response for black, because if you trade the queens now, it seems I can take with the pawn. And the a5 is hanging, and therefore d5, knight a5 seems to be unacceptable for black.
I think you're absolutely right. Queen takes on d4 or even knight takes on d4. This position looks like slightly more comfortable for white.
Yeah, knight d4 also has its merit because knight to b5 will be in some positions. Oh, well, just right here. It is a threat. Knight b5 and then black has tough task guarding both c7 and a5.
Right, so I would assume that knight c6 might be something that Shakhriyar is looking at right now, so probably he is not too concerned about d4, d5. I would imagine, like you said, it feels like a great King's Indian. So what else? I mean, also white is not obliged to play d5. He can do something else.
Yeah, after knight c6, white might consider doing something else. Yeah, well, queen b3 is still not possible, it seems, because d4 is hanging. Yeah. But some, I don't know, just some move, queen d2, queen d3, leave the queen, put the rook on d1, and then see what's going on later. This could be an idea. Yeah, but the more we look at it, the more I think that e takes d4 won't be played. It makes all sense for black to hold the e5 pawn, to hold the center.
Right, and this is why Mamedyarov is thinking hard right now. He's trying to understand should he play knight c6 or not? Should he take on d4 or not? He's trying to evaluate, trying to understand which is more comfortable, which is more easier to play. And although the position seems very simple, it is not really so simple.
The question, can he play... Okay, once again, the situation is certainly against this move. I mean, you don't want to sharpen the game when, you know, when you're... when draw is enough, yeah, and your opponent is desperately trying for a win. But I'm not sure if the objective value of f5 is so terrible, because the thing is, as far as I can see, black is not losing the pawn, so it's not a pawn sacrifice. I don't see the way for white to take the pawn on e5, right? Because precisely because of this, this rook from d8 targeting the queen. So if anything like this happens, yeah, knight e5, knight e5 attacks the queen, so white can't take it. Possibly white can play intermediate queen b3, threatening some discovered checks. But then again, after either king h7 or maybe king h7 is more precise, yeah, this doesn't seem to be really attractive. Like takes,
well, for black definitely it
takes, attack this.
Queen c2 even.
Yeah, you go queen c2 and then you win the pawn, yeah?
Right.
That's why you don't play f5.
f5 looks dubious, really.
It's too much, yeah?
No, it's an interesting idea, but I don't think Shakhriyar is going to go for this.
Essentially, my point was something like this. If white cannot win the pawn, and we will get something like that on the board, that it's very often that this initiative from black compensates for a pawn, and it could be the, you know, kind of the straightforward way to make a draw. Like, right. You get the initiative, then at some point you lose the pawn, you exchange a couple of pieces, you activate your rooks, draw a grid. Doesn't seem to be that easy. So f5 is, and then once again, of course, knowing that your opponent is looking for ways to complicate the position, it kind of stops you from playing such moves. Queen to a6. Oh, well, makes perfect sense. Attacking the knight on c4.
Well, this maneuver already was played before in the aforementioned game between Magnus Carlsen and Ding Liren. They had a similar position, only the knight on d7 was... I mean, both of the knights were on f6 and g6.
Yeah, it was knight was on f6, the other knight was on g6.
Yeah. And white proceeded with this maneuver, queen b3, queen b5. So it makes me question, is it still possible?
Yeah, that's a big question here. Yeah, what happens if white actually does play queen b3, intending to play queen b5?
Well, I assume it still runs into... No, all right, after e takes on d4, you still want... Oh, you cannot take with the knight. Look at that.
That's the question. Can I, or rather, what I take with? Yeah, let's put it this way: if the pawn takes, then it's d5.
It must be the idea.
Yeah, then it's d5, and is black solid? Say takes, knight takes, some queen b5. But again, I mean, the more I look at this knight on d5, it kind of feels that it holds. It holds black position together, even like that. Yeah, there is a backward pawn on c7, but the knight on d5 is so solid. And even if white invades to c6, doesn't seem to be crucial, right? Because I actually want to leave the d file and go to e file. So this seems to be solid enough for black. There is, however, an option to take with the knight, and then it leads to some messy position of
I missed this
knight c5, queen b5, and who knows what's going on.
Well, the pawn on a5 is under attack, at least immediately.
Yeah, so. the pawn on e5 is sort of unpleasantly hanging. If I take, there is a problem. I mean, the knight takes b5 and two pawns are under attack. c7 and a5, it might be that white simply wins a pawn. Right. Not to mention that recapture with the pawn also leads to the position which we concluded to be a bit more favorable for white. But knight b5 looks like a stronger move because...
Yeah, two pawns are under attack.
Can't really defend the pawn. So it seems that after queen b3, black will have to invent something else.
Right.
Black will have to invent something else.
Well, but what else? I mean, queen b5 is a threat, so you need to meet it properly.
Well, the feeling is... Yeah, I mean, first of all, Maxime didn't play queen b3 just yet. Could it be that there is some tactic?
Well, it must be something along the lines of e takes on d4, knight d4, knight c5. I mean, because if the white queen has no access to the b5 square, he has still queen a2. I mean, okay, I was imagining it's a blunder even, but it's not.
Queen a2. But queen b5.
You know, I start to dislike Shakhriyar's choice. It feels a bit undecisive. I mean, okay, rook a to d8, I understand, right? I mean, the idea was not to rush with the knight to g6. And then he puts the other knight to d7, and he allows d4. He plays queen a6. It does feel like some sort of an advantage for white, doesn't it? I mean, white holds the center. He has the space advantage. He has some target on a5, and it's not clear what black has actually. I mean, queen b3.
Yeah, once again, queen a6, if it doesn't work tactically for black, after queen b3, like we were looking at, ed4, then it turns out to be a tempo loss. Because when the queen appears on b5, you don't want to take. And in some positions, I would actually consider just moving the queen backward. Right, like for instance, queen b3. I mean, one of the ways you go here, queen b5, and you don't want to trade. You might want to go queen a7, even though in this position, of course, it's d5 and white collects the pawn on a5.
Right.
So queen a6, it's a very concrete move. I mean, if there is something on queen b3 which we might not be able to see just yet. One more time. So knight takes.
What about immediate d5?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like d5, at least disturbing this knight on c4. So if white takes, black takes, there is a feeling that's a lot of stuff hanging for black. There is a feeling. Well, even though black might as well threaten knight c5 himself. But it looks very shaky, right? I mean, it looks very shaky. Like I play queen b5, for instance.
But this is why I said, I mean, the first feeling is I start not to like it. Because white opens the position, and essentially he is more active, but he played something else.
He actually played knight e3.
Knight e3.
Yeah, he actually plays knight e3. So still, that's a question to be asked. What was planned on queen b3? Knight e3 is more of a typical move, but now the appearance of queen on b5 is no longer that scary.
Right.
The knight leaves from c4. Well, at least it stops any kind of d5 ideas. So it could be, really, it could be that d5 was the move. Not with the pawn, but yeah, knight takes d4.
Right, knight takes on d4, d5. Although I'm not so sure. I mean, visually speaking, it feels sort of better for white. For example, even...
yeah, but what we were looking
at... Knight e5, for example. I don't know. Let's try knight e5. Can we do this?
E5.
I mean, what looks more active?
Then he probably takes and says that's symmetrical.
Yeah, but it's still not equal.
It's still white who is trying, obviously. Yeah, like the queen is strangely placed on a6.
Maybe it's not enough.
Maybe it's not enough, yeah. Maybe he thinks like it's better to keep more pieces on the board. Yeah, I was looking at queen b5 here, but then perhaps... Well, if black takes a b5 is still somewhat...
Or the same idea with the knight. I mean, two pawns are hanging.
Maybe knight... Yeah, but in this case, yeah, if knight takes, there is c6, right? There is no longer a pawn on d6 which was hanging, so maybe c6.
And knight d6, and what is
this?
Knight
d6 and some tactic as usual in Mamedyarov's games.
Knight takes on b6.
You take on b6, rook d6, and
right.
Yeah.
Loses some material.
Still, knight to c4, knight to a5. Yeah.
Well, okay, I mean, he did not like something there, or he felt that knight e3 is more complex, leaves more pieces on the board, more chances for him to try to confuse his opponent.
It's like still playable, by the way, even the final position, rook g6 with knight f4 ideas. But I agree, even if white slows down, doesn't win material immediately, but just like plays g3, that's a very awkward position for black to play, because knight on c4, interestingly enough, is much more efficient than the knight on d5. It always attacks this a5 pawn. If you'll play b6, then it attacks the b6 pawn as well, so the knight cannot move. It's not so pleasant. Yeah, maybe
it's
it's
not.
holdable, but it's not such a pleasant position to play. So still we are puzzled what would have been played by Shakhriyar Mamedyarov after queen b3. Okay, what has happened. Knight e3 is on the board, and Shakhriyar, well, quite quickly replied with rook f to e8. The feeling is that he's somewhat relieved after knight e3. So rook f to e8, just bringing the other rook to a center. And he is looking at d6, d5 in some moment, in the right moment.
Well, perhaps this was a part of his preparation. This entire setup of knight e7, and black is very flexible, and he can choose various setups. So it is white who, I mean, has to make this decision. So, well, perhaps, I mean, probably, I mean, definitely Shak knows what he's doing. But, I mean, the first impressions that were coming in for me, that I did not like this position particularly, but, I mean, probably it's still super solid.
Maybe it's fine, yeah.
It should be fine.
Now that I'm looking back at this queen b3 option, just a second, could it be that we kind of overestimating queen b5 threat? Could it be that he would play b6?
Actually, this is what I wanted to mention.
No, wait, this is hanging. Yeah, so not b6, but first I have to defend this thingy somehow. Like knight g6, just not to give up the center. Let's say knight g6, queen b5 takes b6. I mean, how bad is this one? Maybe this is nothing special.
Not bad at all. Right.
Maybe this is nothing special. And then, since the queens are off, maybe I'll even play f6 just to get rid of this e5 pressure.
Right.
Could be that.
I mean, although this probably is still playable because you can play b4 and then try to
b4
invade
at some
the queen
point.
side.
Yeah, g3, h4 disturb this knight. This, of course, would be playable. But again, we don't know what's going on through Maxime Vachier-Lagrave's head and what he is thinking. I mean, is he happy with an endgame like this? Well, slight pull, maybe chances, but maybe he wants more than that. Maybe he wants to keep more pieces on the board.
Right.
What he did sort of makes sense, because for the time being, it's a bit awkward for black. He cannot really move the knight from e7, because then knight will appear on f5, and this is like you, for instance, instead of rook e8, you play knight g6, letting the knight to step to f5, and then you'll spend quite a lot of moves kind of trying to get rid of this knight, because
right,
it involves king h7, then moving the knight away, then bringing the knight to g8 to defend h6, and only then you can play g6.
So essentially that would be you create a problem and then you spend quite a lot of time trying to solve it.
Yeah.
Right.
So the feeling is like knight from e7 is not planning to move in the nearest future. The other knight from d7 might move to f6 in some positions, like so that when white takes on e5, we take the pawn on e4. I don't know if it will ever materialize. But once again, questions are: if white plays queen c2, queen b3, some move with the queen, just in order to put the rook a1 on d1.
I think queen c2 is already on the board.
Yeah, queen c2 is played. Yeah,
Maxime played it quite quickly, and now Shakhriyar is thinking.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Right, and now that the opening part has ended, perhaps we can look at the clock. What does it say right now? 1 hour and whatever, I do not see for Maxime, something 1 hour and 20, right? That's correct?
Yeah, so the time for the players, one more time, 1 hour 22, 1 hour 7 for blacks, and no big
gap, right?
Yeah, no big gap between the players. Right, Mamedyarov has a bit more problems to solve.
Right, so I wonder what could be the logical continuation here. I mean, Shakhriyar definitely is trying to keep his options open, and this is why he put the knights on e7 and d7, and both of the rooks on the e8 and d8, and well, I mean, white has a number of options here. So far, I think both of the players are playing cat and mouse, right? They are not trying exactly to define the position immediately. So I would not be exactly surprised if Maxime would play even something as simple as g3, king g2.
G3, king g2, lifting the position. Yeah, then h4 at some point could be this.
Or simple rook a to d1. It also makes a perfect sense. And
Yeah, and then the more I look at it, the more I understand it could be that he's trying to make a point that the queen on e6 is actually somewhat misplaced.
Right.
It's not doing all that much until the center gets open. So maybe slowly to try to build up some sort of an initiative on the queen, on the king side, while the queen, the black queen, is on the other side of the board.
I think the biggest problem, biggest danger for any player, including the best players in the world, including Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, is not playing for a long time without a clear game plan. I mean, you can play as flexible as you can, but I mean, you do need some sort of a game plan, and essentially, if you do not have it, I mean, you're spending tons and tons amount of time, and you have to figure out how to play super smart this position and how to keep postponing, making big decisions. But this takes away so much time, and I believe that you want to clarify the situation at some point. I mean, you want to exchange something.
Yeah, I think, well, when we speak of game plans, and then for some, let's say, beginner level followers, it might not be clear what do we mean. And essentially, when grandmasters speak of the game plan, it is what pieces to swap, what pieces to keep on the board, and terms of, and again, the game plan in terms of pawn pushes, pawn exchanges, so, yeah, what kind of pawn structure you want to get. So, well, essentially, as we were saying, like for instance, for black, it sounds to be a reasonable game plan to take on d4 in the moment where white cannot recapture with the pawn, and then to go with d6, d5. Yeah, but the more I look at it, the more I understand it's not that easy for black to, to proceed. Has a lot of moves. Seemingly, nothing is threatening. Yeah, so it's hard to say, okay, white threatens this and then he's better. Not really, but white has a lot of useful moves to, well, to improve his position. So, well, first things first, rook goes to d1. White apparently will try to play g3, king g2, just in case. Yeah, well, maybe at some point to start moving the h-pawn. And indeed, well, it might be the case that the absence of this queen, the queen being on a6, will feel a bit awkward for black. So black really, really needs to work out, I mean, what kind of a pawn push I'm going here in the center. So Mamedyarov is, well, he keeps thinking, and now, as we've already said, moving the knight from e7 doesn't seem to be that nice. Moving the knight from d7 possibly, well, he just played something that I don't, oh well, and he takes on d4 this very moment. So e takes d4 here. What does that mean? Because this seems to be the moment. This seems to be the moment white can actually take with the pawn, even though it is not necessarily bad for black. And black might as well just reply with c6, trying to claim that, yeah, well, I've given up the center, but my position is still quite flexible. Okay, never know. But honestly, by the look of it, I don't really like he takes d4. It's like one of those sad decisions, it's like you think of the position a bit, and you understand you don't really know how to arrange your pieces without this capture, so what to do? Well, Maxime is not certain himself how to react to e takes d4. Yeah, as I said, the obvious capture is the capture with the pawn. You want to preserve the pawn center, which rather mark it with green. So strong two pawns in the center, restricting a lot of options for black knights to move. In case of knight d4, you do get a nice outpost for the knight, but as well, you do give black some options to put the knight on c5. Well, perhaps before that, black will have to play c7, c6. Well, the feeling is like the c7, c6 is always needed because you have to cover the b4 square, b5 square. You have to cover d5 square in some cases because, say, knight g6, knight d5 might be annoying, c7 pawn is hanging, and white might as well add the other knight from b5. So both captures have its merit, but first, of course, you try to take with the pawn. And I'm still not 100% certain what Mamedyarov's next move is going to be. Because, say, I was looking at knight c6, and then if you give black one more move so that he can jump to b4, he probably is quite happy. But then, here comes the question. White goes knight d5, attacks the c7 pawn, and black doesn't seem to have an adequate response, because knight b4 trying to solve the problems with tactical means. White just takes on c7, and this queen is not getting trapped. There is no rook c8 because the knight on d7 is hanging. So it will be essentially just a pawn up for white. So once again, kind of not very happy with how it looks for Mamedyarov after he takes d4. Okay, so as I said, I'm sort of getting stuck with analyzing this position. So I need some help, and I've got helper here. Hopefully we are all set. Once again, Yannick Pelletier is about to join me in the studio. We don't have too many games to analyze. In fact, only one game. Let's see how it's gonna work, and what are your thoughts, Yannick, on this one?
So the last move. Hello, everybody. By the way, and nice to see you, Evgeny, and all of you again. So he took on d4 right now. Okay, that's the last move. Yeah, well, I was expecting some sort of battle of this sort. Like white does not pretend on too much, or actually here he does start pretending, maybe a little, but the opening was rather quiet and not too much perhaps happening. But I think for Vachier-Lagrave, the main goal is to get a fight which can last.
Yeah, and to keep the tension.
Because outplaying your opponent in the opening, I mean, it can happen. I mean, it happened yesterday from the other side, unfortunately for Maxime. But yeah, to hope and count on getting an opening advantage, a significant opening advantage, is really difficult at this level. So to have a long fight where the structure can change, where he can try and perhaps navigate for a long time and try to outplay him in a long game is a possibility. So more or less we could say that the opening has been a success for him, even though objectively white is perhaps just fractionally better.
Yeah, but that's what we were thinking with Artis as well. So at first it looked like nothing really happens, but then as we figured out that white does play d4 and black doesn't have an immediate reaction, kind of, yeah. I mean, if I'm playing black in this position, I would really like to take, and if white takes with the pawn, to go d5, and I'm very happy. Yeah? But my problem is that white actually takes with the queen. That's what we thought.
Even with the queen,
queen takes.
All right.
Yeah, because like trading the queens seems really awkward because a5 is hanging, and then knight b5, yeah, knight b5 is the move as well.
That's unpleasant, true.
Yeah, or even simply taking with the pawn, and once again, black is not in time to play d5 because a5 pawn is hanging. I mean, I don't know how much it is better for white, or is it better? Anyhow, Mamedyarov decided not to do it, but then after queen a6 and knight e3, it turns out this tension is not very pleasant, and maybe that partially explains his idea just to get rid of this tension at some point. Because it was hard to find the move. Like whenever you move the knight from e7 knight gets to f5, and that's unpleasant.
And those two knights on d7 and e7, they are kind of solid, but they also block the two rooks on the central files. So white has more space, and that's probably the main factor which allows us to actually claim that white is a little bit better here. It's interesting that he's thinking now.
Yeah, that's what also makes me think. I mean, what's wrong with the natural recapture with the pawn? Because I can't really see what is the problem here for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. The pawn on c7 is hanging, so it seems black can't really play it slow. Unless some knight f6, maybe knight f6 is the idea. Could be.
But e5 maybe? Takes then a knight d5. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, maybe e5 is not what
it's a bit early.
Is not what black is so much worried about. Yeah, maybe knight f6, as strange as it looks. Maybe this is not a pleasant move for black to face. Yeah, those positions sometimes they are also like nothing really special.
Well, there is a little more space for white, and usually when this is the case, knights don't really feel well without too much space. But okay, there.
Maybe he is considering knight takes d4 as well.
Yeah, because this was his reaction earlier, as you mentioned, or queen takes d4, but to have this pawn structure by taking with a piece on d4. So now that's why he considers both options. For sure. I mean, it's earlier he wanted always to take back with a piece. Now he has the option to take back with the pawn. Because it's a critical moment. I mean, you can change the structure. So
the significant difference it seems that now if you take with the piece, that black has. I'm not sure if you need it immediately, but like black has c6, while previously the knight was on c4, so it was at some point it was kind of hard to play c7, c6 because always d6 was hanging. Here it feels like black can play c6, then in the right moment just move the knight to f6, go d5, and maybe just equalize.
So we have an answer. Knight takes.
Knight takes. So he decided to go with knight takes d4.
Well, c6, just rook d1. I mean.
Yeah, well, still this long-lasting pressure, that's what one needs in order to pose problem after problem after problem. Yeah, speaking of this tournament in general, if we think of opening surprises, it haven't been that many decisive games.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's classical chess we are talking about. Let's say Mamedyarov, we've mentioned 2 times. He was very successful with opening surprises. Sure, and other than that, well, we can perhaps say, what do you think? Topalov against Vachier-Lagrave? Because he got some interesting position at some point.
Well, that was a great game. Very tense, and it could have gone either way. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave won with black, but he offered a draw during that game, so it was really tense. And also, the game Grischuk Vachier-Lagrave, which was also decisive in the semi-final. That was also a huge
very
fight.
Interesting, and as well the opening idea, even though perhaps not really sound, but it was quite an interesting try to prohibit playing the Grunfeld at all.
No, we have the 2 players who actually, the only 2 who actually had decisive games in classical chess in this tournament before the final. Yeah, and clearly, they both deserve to be there. I mean, not that the others didn't fight well, but they didn't succeed as much.
I fully agree that both players here. And, speaking of Grand Prix situation in general, it feels like Shach really needs this win more in terms of fighting for the candidates. It's a second leg for him, and he basically spoiled his attempt in Moscow, losing in round 1, so got 0 Grand Prix points. For Maxime, it's quite a comfortable situation, in fact, because that's his first Grand Prix appearance. Even if he loses the final, it's 8 points. 3 bonus points he's getting for winning the matches in classical chess. Almost like, like a winner.
Nepomniachtchi has 9 from winning Moscow. Yeah. So he would, if he loses this final, then Vachier-Lagrave has 8.
So still pretty much in the race.
Yeah, two more Grand Prix to go, exactly as Nepomniachtchi. But as you said, Mamedyarov is going to be certainly the leader. I mean, if he wins the final, he's going to be the leader of the race in the Grand Prix series. And, of course, he has only one more try so he will need to score quite high as well.
But then again, when I'm checking, it always felt for me like if you didn't use the attempt, you have one more tournament. That's really beneficial. But here, you lose in round 1, you don't get any points.
Yeah.
You lose in round 2, you get only 1 point.
Yeah.
So, well, a difference of, let's say, 3 Grand Prix points, then all of a sudden, this last tournament you have to be in the final to compensate for that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that's
it's not easy, but
winning one leg, and especially in this, if Mamedyarov doesn't lose today, so he gets as well the bonus point for winning the final in classics. That will be a big result because it will be 11 points.
I think so,
And all of a sudden, he is the leader of this race.
And we have Grischuk who went to the semi-final as well here, final in Moscow. So if I'm not wrong, he would be his 10 points maybe?
Yeah,
if I'm not wrong.
If we counted correctly, we also thought that Grischuk must be on 10 points, yet another candidate to fight.
But he is also, left with only just one tournament to increase his number of points because he's standing well so far, but he needs to score well in his final leg. So we have a move, yeah? What did he do?
Yeah, we have a move.
Did
it
he
was
play
C7, C6.
As you predicted.
He leaves the board. Mamedyarov.
He's been walking quite often. Also, yesterday he had a lot of preparation, so he could afford the walking. Today he seems to be walking quite a lot as well.
So the time situation. Maxime has started to spend time as well.
Keeps
1 hour 11, if I see it correctly, versus 58 minutes. And no big time advantage. Well, I believe during this Grand Prix we had a couple of games when it was really substantial. Some people, and I believe Grischuk was getting in a time trouble couple of games, even though they were finished in the draw eventually. Yeah. So, well, on average, we can say it was a very exciting tournament. It's a pity today is the last classical game we are witnessing. Possibly, if Maxime will not manage to win, it will be the last game of the tournament. But still more Grand Prix coming. Will be next tournament in Germany, Hamburg, and then everything will be, the series will be concluded in Tel Aviv
in December.
So, thanks for joining. Well, let's wait for the game to develop, and we'll stay in touch, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'll be right there. Okay, see you soon.
All right, so Mamedyarov continued with C6, as I thought was kind of a program move for Black. Now the question is how easy or how hard it's going to be for Black to come up with D6, D5. Normally that's the move you are looking for to equalize. At least that's the feeling.
Right, I'm back here in the studio with us, and I do not like what I'm seeing, to be honest, because it feels that Shakhriyar has acknowledged that he is worse. Definitely, the opening, it started actually quite well for him, and I had the feeling that something started to go wrong with these moves, knight e7 and queen a6, which I felt they were slightly,
imprecise or something.
And then comes the decision to give up the center after e takes on d4. I would imagine this is something you do not make out of the good life.
Yeah, the feeling is like maybe this move was needed, but you're not happy taking d4.
And essentially, White won the battle for the center. He controls more squares, and now he played this move c6. Essentially, he has weakened his queen side. The pawn on d6 is weak. And it's not even clear if he is actually going to be able to play d6, d5 at some time. So I think it's safe to assume that White holds quite a solid advantage here.
Yeah. So once again, if we are playing blitz, if there is no time to think, I believe a move like rook a to d1 is what comes into my mind. Rook a d1, just to, put the rook on the semi-open file. You're intending to play knight f5 at some point.
I'm sure that Maxime feels he is better. He is probably, again, not sure exactly how much better is he. Is it a solid advantage or it's just slightly better? Definitely he feels he is better, and he's just trying to understand how should he actually continue. Rook A to D1 makes most sense here, definitely by far, and it doesn't clarify the situation immediately. The rook on A1 has nothing better to do anyway, I would imagine, right?
So rook A to D1 we expect, and then, yeah, let's think for black. I mean, what black can...
I mean, I want to play D5. I mean, if I don't manage to play D5 anytime soon, it's going to be a tough struggle for me, I would imagine. I mean, I want to play something like knight f6 followed by d6, d5. But even if I manage to do that, even let's say if this is possible, I mean, white can even go forward with the pawn e4, e5.
You mean like if black
like
plays
this,
knight
right?
f6?
So I would imagine knight f6, f3.
Oh, well, let's say, yeah, maybe.
For example, like f3.
Yeah. And this,
and e5.
Knight goes back and some f4. This,
or
this
even
might
e6.
Be, might be
e6 as well is also
or
possible.
e6 is also here.
I mean, this feels
so
like not a great position for Shak. So I already expressed my concerns previously that I felt that perhaps this knight d7, queen a6 was too smart, too waiting decisions, and it feels that it has sort of backfired for him, and he has landed into a worse position. Definitely, he's not in a big trouble. I would just say he's solidly worse, and white still needs to prove whatever he can do from this position.
Yeah, the feeling is like Maxime has made the move and it was not rook A to d1, if I'm not mistaken.
Something else was played.
Feels like he has played something else.
Knight d to f5.
Knight d to f5.
Well, it's logical, right? I'm not sure if it was mandatory or not, because white is essentially happy to trade the knights, because the knight on f5 is such a very nice outpost. So let's imagine what can Shakhriyar do. He can
take on f5.
Probably take,
I mean,
right?
that's what you do. You take on f5.
Right. Knight takes f5, knight takes f5, knight f6, I would imagine. I'm not saying it's a mandatory move, because black wants to play d5, and now the question is, what does white do here?
Still, I would think rook A to d1. But then, then the big question is how do you fight against d5?
Right, d5.
Well, you know, in some positions, I know they play c3, c4 here, but this doesn't seem to stop d5 in our case. I mean, in some positions that somehow they play c4 and rook a d1. I mean, it's like, but white doesn't seem to be on time here. It's still d5.
Feels like some sort of a Marozzi bind, isn't it?
Yeah.
With the inclusion of a to a4, essentially. I mean, Marozzi bind is one of the most popular pawn structures in modern chess, and by putting the
e4,
pawns...
c4 versus the backward pawn on d6,
right.
So you can get it from the...
Although, I mean, here you have this weak square on c5, so essentially this might be the big idea for Maxime, why he actually preferred to play knight f5. Let's say there's this trade on f5, knight f6, and then he wants to play c4 because black doesn't have this other knight position on c5.
There is no knight to go to c5.
Right.
But still, I mean, after c4, first of all, I'm not convinced that d5 is not possible, and even if it's not possible, black can try for queen b6, put the queen on c5, possibly e5. Well, that feels defendable, and if I'm playing white, if I can somehow play this position without c3, c4. I would probably prefer to do that.
Right, and ideally black would be happy to get rid of the knight from f5, but how to do it easily? It's not so easy to be done. I mean, g6, the pawn on h6 is hanging unless he's happy to sacrifice it, which I doubt he is.
Maybe f3. I mean, as ugly as it looks, but at least it sort of stops d5, because now d5, e5, the knight will have to leave back, and then white might have, like here, f4 is the move. And well, sometimes e6 followed by knight h6 might be the move. So this creates some ideas for white, at least.
Well, f3 I really like, because f3 also gives this possibility for white to play queen f2, queen g3 afterwards, bring the queen to the king side and try to create some attacking ideas.
Yeah, so that these maneuvers become possible to G3 or to H4, depending on the situation.
So I think essentially it forces for black to trade queens, at least play queen b6 to defend against this idea. So perhaps white is already happy to go for this endgame. Let's say queen b6, queen f2. I mean, I don't know if this is mandatory or not, but
takes.
And now rook d1 is the big threat incoming.
Yeah, so maybe.
And d5 again is met by e5.
Maybe I have to play d5, but then in this case it's e5. Knight goes here. It's still kind of a tense.
Knight d6 is very unpleasant.
Yeah, knight d6.
Although it's not clear.
I mean, I might take on e5, knight b7. There is rook b8. I mean, it's the tactic goes on. Yeah,
right.
The tactic goes on. So it's not easy to say if it works or not. But that's something Maxime Vachier-Lagrave definitely will look for. Shach didn't take on f5 just yet. Does he see any other way to play?
Well, maybe he is just trying to understand if white actually wants to take on e7 himself. I mean, he could play knight f6.
Maybe this makes sense, yeah. Because if white tries to transpose into the same thing by going to f5, then you have rook e6, which could be better.
Right.
Like defending this pawn and then planning to put the other rook on e8.
An extra tempo, essentially.
Yeah.
It might be important.
So then it makes perfect sense that he pauses here after knight d to f5 and is thinking on whether he wants to take on f5 himself or play knight f6 and wait for white to resolve this kind of tension.
Well, ideally, if I'm black, I would want to play g6 together with h5, but I don't think he really has the time for this. So, for example, if I could make both of these moves in one go, so I would just play h5, g6 immediately.
Yeah, but then again, the pawn on d6 is hanging, so you need even more moves in a row. Yeah,
not done two, but even three.
Essentially what we are talking about is this. White spends some time, black goes h5, white spends even more time, and then I mean, I don't know if I play g6 or just take and play g6. So this is the way black gets rid of this knight on f5, and it has to go, and then black normally is okay.
Right.
But as you could see, it involves white making a strange-looking move, king h1.
Right. So it's not so easy to accomplish this, and essentially, I mean, black is going to trade the knights on f5. So the only question is, who is going to do it? Is it going to be white or black? Maybe knight f6 indeed is a smarter move because, but I mean, I really do believe that white is going to play f3 anyway, because f3 is sort of like a protective move to protect the pawn on e4, and it also meets d5 idea with this
e5,
eventual e5.
Oops, no, not knight e4. Yeah, once again, so knight f5, knight f5, knight f6. Why white needs f3, right? Because in this case, for instance, I mean, I'm not actually convinced it's that terrible, but that gives black an additional option to go to put the knight on e4. Maybe it is still playable for white.
Maybe it is. Maybe now he can play f3 and essentially winning a couple of tempos. I mean, it's not so clear.
There is another idea. What happens if I do this? Strangely, like knight takes, pawn takes. And yes, the pawn is exposed, but maybe rook f8 is a cool move. Yeah, rook f8 is there, and then the pawn on d6 is gone. Because otherwise, it's like if you trade the rooks, I believe black is in serious trouble because the pawn cannot be taken. It's
and
mate
C5
on e8.
Is d7. Right?
Well, c5, yeah, it's d7 again. The pawn cannot be taken.
Although queen c6.
Queen c6. Maybe you still kind of hold rook e7. Right. I mean,
it can be
maybe
problem.
It works, yeah. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, yeah.
Right.
So you don't want to calculate such things. Yeah, but after knight d6, I mean, if this happens, then it seems black has rook f8 and then just a capture on f6.
Yeah, rook f8 is the solid choice. So, I mean, I would imagine still while playing this f3. And also another idea, I do not believe we are going to see this, but f3 For example, after this trade of the knights,
knight takes, knight f6, f3.
f3 might actually try to accelerate some kind of attack. Obviously, queen f2, but I was thinking something along the lines of g4, h4, g5. I mean, it's probably a pure fantasy because...
yeah, well, it could be in some positions.
Some moment.
Yeah, it's in some positions.
Right. So Shakhriyar is still trying to understand what to do here, unless he has some other options here available for him, which I'm not so sure he has any.
Yes, a knight f6 at once, or knight takes on f5 followed by knight f6. Those are two ways we were trying to approach this this position.
Right.
So knight f6, keeping the extra pair of knights on the board. Well, technically, yeah, after f3, we said it's a very long, very long way to go, but can he actually play h5?
Well, so we can immediately check it. Knight e7, takes, knight f5, and what is this? And queen to g5 for g3. And queen, wherever
queen
it goes.
d2.
Queen d2 looks...
Let's say g6.
Looks dangerous, no? Queen g5.
Well, it does, yeah.
Queen g5, the idea...
Queen g5.
Knight d4 maybe is the idea, I don't know.
Ah, wait a sec.
Oh,
this seems to be possible. Queen, unless I blunder something. So queen h6, threatening mate in 1. Black takes, then it's a check. This check seems to be important. King goes wherever it goes. White takes on f5. Rook seemingly has to take, and I don't see the way for black to defend the knight on f6, even with queen b6 check, king goes. And it doesn't matter if the king would be somewhere else, because the knight cannot leave, the rook is... no, that's how you make mistakes, because it's a check, and then the rook is protected, and then knight goes to g8.
Yeah, but you can play f6 still and claim
still
an advantage.
This looks very scary for black, right? The king is weak.
Well, I'm not sure this whole line is 100% accurate, but idea like that might be there. I mean,
yeah. So it is very scary for black to spend. I mean, it's like you spend two tempi, h5 and g6 at the same time, weakening your own king side.
And Maxime has played rook a to d1.
So he's not scared of this d5, knight e4 line. Maybe he's planning to play f3 later on, with knight already being on e4.
Right. Well, now you can obviously see for black that the queen on a6 is clearly misplaced. I mean, it's doing nothing there. So Shakhriyar would dream about magically transporting this queen back to c7 and protecting the weak pawn on d6.
Kind of back to life.
Yeah. Okay, but this actually forces matter, because rook d1 looks very powerful and simple move. So you do not want to play c6, c5, protecting this pawn on d6, because that damages your pawn structure for pretty much the whole game. And now the pawn is still under attack on d6.
The pawn is still under attack.
You cannot play rook e6 because of e5, I would imagine.
Yeah, rook e6, there is e5, and this pin on d-file is very annoying.
Yeah, so what do you do? I mean, this is very unpleasant.
Well, have to play d5, it seems.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, yet again, this forces for white some answers. I mean, I don't think he's going to take on d5. I mean, it makes not any sense, although the knight on f5 is feeling very powerful.
Yeah, the knight on f5 is still a powerful thing, yeah?
Yeah, unless there's some direct continuation, let's say. No, but okay, you can just play c takes on d5, and the queen from a6 is back into game.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, somehow you turn to, kind of get rid of this option because it's an isolated pawn in the end, but this might be a very solid move.
Right.
Because queen is back to action. Yes, the d pawn is somewhat weak, but usually with this particular material, with this particular structure, is not no big thing. Yeah, like queen returns at some point. Black even is fine to put the pawn on b6, guarding a5, and slowly he will work on bringing the knight to e6 to control d4. So this should be a defendable position.
It feels like that, and also I think it pretty much makes it clear that white is not going to take on d5.
No,
so
that's not the plan. Yeah,
is the move.
So e5 will be the move. Then it makes sense to go to e4, not anywhere else.
And f3 again makes
And
perfect sense. Queen b6, I would imagine you need to
probably
include.
you want to give this check, and then things are far from being clear, right? So king h2.
King h2. I mean, you have to retreat with the knight somewhere. Knight c5, presumably.
Yeah.
But black is in quite a danger. Look at this position. I mean, queen f2. I mean, how do you play this position?
Queen f2, knight a4. Yeah, I mean that's the pin. Yeah, so
Right.
Yeah, I mean knight a4 or even knight d7. Still queen g3.
Queen g3. No. This is very dangerous.
Looks terribly dangerous.
I mean, we can slightly continue this line. For example, I don't know. I mean, g6, knight takes on h6, and knight g4. You have so many weak squares.
This seemingly wins on a spot.
Or maybe e6 immediately.
This seemingly
right?
wins on a spot because knight h6, knight f7, and
right.
everything collapses. So rook a d1 is very, very unpleasant move to face. Well, tough decision for Shah. He started to think after rook a d1 having 15 minutes on his clock. And now I don't know how much he's going to spend here. It's move 22, so
right.
If it takes him like 20 minutes, something around 20 minutes to decide now, then another 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and here we go. The position is still complex. He's under attack. He's in time trouble. That seems to be like a perfect scenario for Vachier-Lagrave.
Yeah, and you really have to commend Maxime for the chosen strategy, because one would think that if you're behind in the match, I mean, you lost the first game in the crashing fashion in 2.5 hours, that you want to strike back immediately. You want to go for this some kind of heavy action, and he had this opportunity actually. Mamedyarov was inviting for him to go for some more sharp lines after this queen b8. We can perhaps look at the opening phase. He was inviting him to play bishop c6, d4.
Yeah, that's a possibility. After knight f1, queen a7, yeah, that's probably is already... Well, it's kind of, you can keep more pieces on the board with rook e2 or queen e2, yeah, but perhaps Maxime was going for this idea already.
Yeah, and Maxime kept a cool head, and he was pressing for a small advantage. And somewhere around here, I mean, I believe it was around the move, whichever it was, after bishop takes on e3, knight e3, knight e7, a4, rook d8, 14 smooth. I think black was completely fine, and from this moment, things started to go wrong for Shakhriyar.
Well, the feeling is like Shah had everything analyzed to this position, more or less. And then, I mean, looking also on the time he spends on a move, so 3.5 minutes there. 8.5 minutes on knight d7, which, well, in retrospective, doesn't seem to be the best decision. d4, another 8.5 minutes on queen a6. So essentially, he didn't know what to do exactly. The position is solid, and maybe it's very close to equal, but still, you know, it's unpleasant to play over the board. And then his decision to give up the center, well, doesn't look that appealing.
Well, this is essentially what I mentioned before. It's so difficult to play without a clear game plan. I mean, you want to clarify things, and he chose this line and believed it is a very solid line, but then at some point he probably realized that it is so difficult for him to play, and he has no real game plan, and this is why I would assume, I don't know, I mean, I assume he gave up the center with the reasons he can counter-strike in the center, but you can see it backfired.
Yeah, so far we have difficulties finding the move for black. I mean, it's not knight c8, yeah?
Well, I mean, if you play a move like that, you're completely desperate, I would imagine. I mean...
it shouldn't be knight c8, even though there is, well, I can see like a direct refutation. It just feels so terrible.
Right. I mean, any move white makes secure the advantage.
e4 is hanging. But even this, like knight g4, you take, and then, essentially the knight on f5 versus knight on c8. I mean, it has to be an advantage. No, so the feeling is like you take, and then, then you go d5, as we said. Unless
you protect the pawn somehow else, but how do you do it?
I mean, it's like some...
So, I mean, we can slightly look at it. Rook e6, e5, and knight e8. Does it hold? I don't believe it.
Yeah, well, it's hard to believe that this holds.
You just take on d6.
Oh,
right?
I'll just take on d6 indeed, because knight d6, I'm swapping the rooks, winning a piece. Like that. Black's problem is he can't take on d6 because, yeah, that's a nice and equal position, but rook e8 is mate in one. Yeah, till I didn't realize that the d6 pawn was hanging, I wasn't sure that black is in such a desperate situation. I was even looking at this, let me be honest, giving the pawn, but, simplifying, getting rid of those knights, and then hoping to, to break in the center. Well, essentially, a rook endgame, one pawn down, which would be double pawn, wouldn't be such a disaster. I understand black's position is worse here, but possibly playable, like queen c4, get it on c5, some tricks. But of course it doesn't work, because after d6 he just takes, after g6 he just takes the other pawn.
And then e4, e5 follows after that, so it's not
that's
great.
Much better.
Oh, look at that. Knight c8, we just mentioned
Knight c8, oh wow.
Well, this is a move you do not want to make unless you are completely desperate. And
so that
means he's desperate. I don't know.
That's Schach's decision, knight to c8, move 22, which, well, looks very scary.
Looks scary, but honest. I mean, he felt, okay, this is definitely...
This looks...
I wanted to mention it, but I just didn't believe in this attack.
Up to this, even this scary. I mean, right. I'm starting to be worried about moves like that, which normally gives you the idea how bad black's position is, because it's like with the idea to play it slow, right? Knight f5 and then...
Wherever the king goes, there's no king h7 because of e5. Maybe that is...
king h7... runs into e5 and then
presumably
discovered checks to d6. Yeah, of course, I mean, it's easy to say when you're commentating. Of course, for the players, it's much harder. Maybe this works, and then if I attack the h6, he has knight g8. Yes, knight g7 could be too hasty, but at the same time, if white somehow prepares, like kills queen c1, for instance, says, please take the pawn on e4, so then take on g7, go knight f5. Looks so scary for black.
Let us remind you what is their current score between each other. They have played quite a number of times between each other, and including yesterday's game, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov is leading their score 7 wins to 1 victory. I mean,
7-1.
7-1, essentially, including 13 draws. So that's a huge difference, and it would seem that Maxime doesn't really have so many chances to strike back, and he proved it, that statistics, it's perhaps not such an important thing, because he beat Grischuk in the semifinal. He did it for the first time in the classical chess, so it might be entirely possible that he is going to strike back today and reach the tiebreaks.
So let's see, because this, of course, will be a big result for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. So far, the tournament was so smooth for him that he was winning in classical chess. I mean, first 2 matches, he won game 1, which is a big thing, of course. And now he found himself in absolutely the opposite situation. So will he be able to level the score? That's, of course, a big question. But after a move like knight c8, at least you understand you do get a chance.
Well, yeah, definitely. And the question is, how is white going to use this advantage to his favor? And I mean, there are a number of possibilities for other players, and Maxime still has well over 1 hour, and Shakhriyar is still not so down on time, something like
41 minutes.
41 minutes. Yeah, it's not so.
That is what I see.
Not so critical still, but the position is extremely unpleasant. I mean, the first continuation with jumps in mind is playing f3. F3 played. After all, this pawn was hanging all the time. Yeah, so I wanted actually to suggest before Maxime played it, it makes perfect sense. You want to play queen f2, queen g3, have the queen join the attack, you secure the pawn on e4.
Is it ever d5? Because at least white doesn't seem to have an option of playing e5. Maybe that's the big point. Not that I'm very happy with black's position with knight on c8, but at least like I'm playing d5, So in case of a capture, I suspect I take with the pawn, so that to keep both knights at least, not to exchange the f6 knight. Could it be that it holds? I mean, it's not such an attractive position, of course, and white is by no means forced to take on d5. He might as well prepare this knight g7 sacrifice. With,
knight g7,
with
knight
queen
f5, and e5 as well.
Maybe, yeah, that's the other thing. But even like if he prepares like queen c1, does black have any defensive moves? It's not clear. It's knight g7, kind of saying knight g7 is gonna come next move. So d5, of course, is extremely risky. Extremely risky continuation, but who knows? Maybe.
I think you do not position the knight on c8 to play d5 the next move.
Yeah,
probably.
that once again, I fully agree with this. It sounds ridiculous. Just that I don't really see a comfortable move for black. Well, could be that you play queen b6 and it stops white's from active actions immediately. But at the same time, if you put the queen on b6, then after, say, king h1 or king h2, there is also an option that, well, since white has both knights, knight c4 becomes a threat. So, well, I don't like how it looks for Mamedyarov. What can I say? Yeah, so f3 played, d5 doesn't seem to be a move at all.
So I would imagine I would want somehow to make h5 and g6 happen. I mean, maybe that was the whole idea. He retreated with the knight so that he can proceed with h5. I mean, you do need to protect the h pawn, and then you want to play g6 the next move. But are you in time for this?
So this is sort of the same evaluation. The king runs to f8 and then knight. Does knight g8 save though? Because there is queen g5 and queen g7.
Exactly.
Yeah, this doesn't seem to save. Yeah, it's like you'll have to give away all. This rook is hanging as well. No, that's
there's too much hanging.
That's too much.
Right.
That's too much. So it does seem that after h5, even knight takes g7 works.
But this is so accurate. I mean, h5, knight g7, king g7, knight f5. Okay, king f8 is not the only move.
Probably some other move, yeah.
King h7 maybe.
King h7.
But still, it's the same idea.
Same idea. Here, threatening queen h6. No, so maybe king h8. Yeah, maybe king h8 is what you do. King h8 is what you do. Yeah, so after this, you play knight h7. After queen h6, you go rook g8. And if this holds, yeah?
Right. At least there's no immediate checkmate, and white has sacrificed a piece, so...
Yeah, it's not that easy to add any of those rooks to the attack. So probably that's over-optimistic. Yeah.
Maybe h5 is the way to go. So, okay, I mean, you can still continue to attack exactly with the means of queen f2 so that you meet g6 with queen h4.
Or queen g3, because you also target the d6 pawn.
Right.
So you kind of guard the knight, still you want to play queen g5 and get there, plus the d6 pawn is... Yeah, still the feeling like it's like too loose. You play g6 and h5 and a lot of darks and weaknesses against around the king, yeah? Queen h4 as well. I mean, it
looks ugly.
Simply looks too dangerous. But that's one of the moves Shakhriyar has to play.
Right.
It's one of the moves he has to play. I mean, that's really, really unpleasant situation.
There's also this problem. I mean, when you are sitting in such a bad position, sometimes it's very difficult to tell where start the real threats and where are the illusory threats, because everything starts to look like a dangerous threat. For example, perhaps even this knight takes on g7, it doesn't work according to computer. But, I mean, Shakhriyar still needs to check this. I mean, at all move, every single move, he needs to, okay, is knight g7 now working or not? I play h5. Is knight g7 working or not? Let's say I include queen b6, queen f2. Is knight g7 working or not? And this takes so much time, so essentially this means he is going to be drifting forward at time trouble. Yeah,
that's almost time trouble guaranteed, yeah, because we did check d5, it doesn't look like it's happening. And if it's not d5, then it means the character of the position will be the same for next, I don't know how many, 10 moves, maybe more. And then it exactly means that on every move you have to make sure that you are not losing after knight takes g7.
Well, f3 is really a wonderful move because it solidifies white's structure and allows the queen to join the king side.
Yeah, this queen f2, queen g3 is basically a very, very annoying threat.
Yeah,
Not sure
and
how
if Shakhriyar was thinking about bringing the queen closer to the action with queen b6, now he is not so sure because this allows for white to play queen f2 in the next move. Maybe at some moment some tactical ideas for white might appear with knight g7, knight f5, and the queen on b6 potentially is unprotected in some lines. So what do you do here?
I'm thinking for black. I mean, okay, since we started to play passive, can we play passive till the end of the game? So rook e6, point being, if white goes there, what I want to play is knight e8. And I know it looks ugly, but I've defended g6, d6, possibly knight will come back to e7. Yeah, well, I'm not a big fan of this position. Not a big fan of this position, but maybe he can play like this. So essentially saying, yes, my position is bad, but I don't want to resign just yet. I want to keep my stuff protected.
I wonder how Shakhriyar's consciousness allowed him to play such a move as knight c8, because, I mean, normally you do not look at these moves at all. I mean, you want to do something else. Even here, I mean, knight takes on f5 and d5 and whatever. I mean, it would make more sense. And knight c8, I mean...
Yeah, indeed, knight c8 looks too much. The feeling is like it's too much, yeah. f3. Once again, what did we say? This was an attempt to survive, right? Maybe he's still alive like this, or did we find any...
No, we did not find anything immediately. I think he actually played d5.
Yeah, he did play d5.
But something feels completely wrong with this move. I don't know what.
Yeah. So our conclusion was like you played knight c8 and d5. So that's
the conclusion was you just don't play this move because there's something wrong. I'm not sure what is wrong there, but our conclusion was you don't play knight c8 and then you play
d5. Yeah, the combination of those two moves. So you put your knight on c8, white has the knight on f5. It's precisely the time you want to open the center, right?
Right. So there must be some kind of a tactical solution to this. I mean, perhaps even knight g7, knight f5
well,
is
could
possible.
work in some combination with other moves, yeah?
Right.
Well, there is, for instance, well, possibly a move like queen d2. So that I assume... Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is what black can do. No, I'm taking just taking too many pieces. Yeah, queen takes, rook takes, followed by rook c8.
Right.
Yeah, and so in this very moment, the d pawn is pinned, d4 is not possible, and then I'm hoping to take on g7. So all stuff like that, yeah. Queen f2 as well, after d5, just queen f2, queen g3, maybe let black take on e4. Looks very, very dangerous for Shakhriyar.
And he perfectly knows this. He probably realizes he has nothing better to do anyway, and he is also not happy that his queen is cut off so far at the queen side and doing nothing really. So essentially white is attacking with two knights and the queen, a couple of pawns at the king side with only one bare knight defending the king.
Yeah, well, potentially rook on e6, but that's it, yeah?
Right.
That's it. And if the center is getting open, we can say as well that white rooks might step into attack.
So can we try to make this knight takes on g7 work immediately? Does this work?
Knight g7 immediately.
Right.
King takes.
Knight f5.
Check on f5. What was the latest version? That was the way to
but
not
it was
to
with
lose
the pawn on d6, right? About this position,
but okay,
not so
still.
sure.
Okay, king f8. I mean, I suspect king f8 loses precisely the same way. So it's no, the pawn is on h6. The pawn is on h6. This is the big difference. So he goes there, and we had the pawn on h5 in the previous version. So it was queen g5, queen g7 mate. So maybe this thingy doesn't work at all. Maybe this doesn't work at all.
No, Maxime looked a bit surprised seeing d5 on the board. I don't know. You definitely don't expect it. So also, I would assume his feelings are exactly the same. There's something wrong about this move. Perhaps he did not even calculate it. He thought, okay, my opponent is going to play d5. I'm going to figure it out. And now he has to figure it out. So okay, what
I
was
really want like queen d2, queen f2, something. I mean,
I think queen f2 is the most
yeah, just
human
just
choice.
to play queen g3.
So the point being, d takes on e4. We are gonna sacrifice big time. Are we?
You want to take on g7
I wanted to sacrifice
immediately?
something. And presumably there is some checkmate, or maybe there is not. I don't know.
Here. Then we are entering this silly territory when he starts, going to g6. Because now there is a potential that a lot of stuff is getting traded. There is also queen b6 or queen a7 threat to pin the queen. So I wasn't that aggressive, to be honest. I thought to start with this move and then to see how black reacts to queen g3. But maybe there is knight h5. This I don't know. But again, I mean, if something starts to go on there and then queen g5 and then
No.
how on earth this queen will be on time?
No,
yeah,
no.
Queen
This
on
looks
a6,
completely unacceptable for black.
But then there is no move because g7 is hanging. If this, I assume it's just a check, and on king g7 this one more knight. King f8. Well, should be something. Queen h4.
Or queen f4 also.
Queen f4.
Yeah, there's just so many moves to attack. So essentially, the black king is left alone against the queen and two knights hunting him down. So I cannot imagine this.
Queen f2, it's not that easy to come up with the move for black, if possible at all. If possible at all. Yeah, but if white plays queen f6, black, is it good or bad? But he will have to take on e4 and continue playing the. I mean, okay, unless there is some king f8, playing g6. But it's essentially the same position. Yeah,
this
we take on
same,
yeah,
right.
That's the same terrible position. If white wants it, maybe white has more than this. Yeah, looks like a huge advantage. This queen f2 after d5.
Right. So far the game is heading for disaster for Shakhriyar, because after the opening we guessed that he has done his homework quite well. I mean, he made this supposedly very nice novelty, rook a to d8, and I was assuming he is going to position the knight back on c6, and then something started to go terribly wrong.
Yeah, that was really a strange moment, because rook a d8 was played relatively quickly. Bishop c4, it's very logical. I mean, in most of the lines, or all of those lines, you take on c4. That's move 16. And then 7 moves later, he's desperately playing d5 not to be, squeezed. And after d5, he might be losing after queen f2.
Right. I mean, okay, so definitely.
That means, yeah.
We are not trying to take away any credit from Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who is a fantastic player. But I mean, definitely he could not have got this huge advantage without the help of his opponent, which is essentially what happened yesterday. I mean, yesterday also, Maxime was unable to show the best of his qualities, so he got crushed very quickly, and this is not how Maxime usually plays, especially in his pet Grunfeld. So essentially, I would say today we are seeing exactly the same with colors reversed. I mean,
yeah, or colors being the same because it's white who has the advantage, but the player sitting at the other side.
Oh, but queen f2 looks so bad.
Yeah, queen f2 looks natural for white, and it really looks bad for black. Not even. Yeah, of course, Maxime having more than an hour and knowing the importance of the moment.
Queen f2 is on the board.
He will double check it, but here it is. Queen f2 on the board. A really critical spot for Shakhriyar.
How do you defend against queen g3?
Yeah, it's like queen g3 or queen h4 will be played.
Or even knight g7, knight f5, and queen is one step closer to joining the attack.
This time it might be, that queen h4 will be decisive move, yeah?
Right.
Maybe rook e6, but then it once again doesn't make sense. There is one more motive that white might want to play e5. That's a minor thing, but let's say black does this, for instance. Well, which accidentally protects black from the idea I wanted to show. So my point was that, I mean, I don't know what move you have to... Yeah, king h8, by the way. Might not be such a stupid move. And then you go e5. No, I'm looking for a move to illustrate one more tactical idea. e5, and then when you take with the rook, it's queen g3, double attacking the rook and the pawn on g7.
That's nice.
As an idea. But king h8 is not exactly the move you want to play. It's better than king f8 though, because in case of queen g3 at least there is rook g8, but still the feeling is like something will fall apart for black.
Well, I think it is already slowly falling apart because, well, this is essentially how the big trouble starts. I mean, it doesn't come out of the blue. It starts with something. I mean, it starts with some little nuances, starts with some little unpleasant things. I mean, you do not know exactly what to do. There's something which bothers you. Then there's yet another minor problem which starts to annoy you. And these things, they tend to accumulate. Then you make some sort of inaccuracy. You wind up in a potentially worse strategic position. Then your mood falls down pretty much very quickly, and then you make yet another serious mistake, and there you go. You have a very bad position. So
yeah, that's the feeling that something very similar as you describe has happened to Shakhriyar, and particularly I'm interested to know the sort of the evaluation, the analysis of position here. Queen c2, when it becomes transparent that white has got something from the opening. Yeah, black is not comfortable, but still the distance from this to this should not be 3 moves.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
something.
like, yeah, it is unpleasant, but you have to
Even this
somehow,
position. I mean, even this position is not so bad, right? I mean,
yeah,
you just
you
make
have to
any
keep
move.
tension. Yeah, I understand it's not pleasant, but I mean, once again, you want to play c6, just play c6, for instance. Put the knight on f8. Well, it's not that pleasant, but it is playable, it feels like.
So I would imagine something there happened. I mean, Shakhriyar probably wanted to do something else, and then along the way, he just changed his mind. He was intending to do something else, and definitely when he went for this position, he had nothing in his mind about creating a weakness on d6, then retreating with the knight on c8. So
yeah, that seems like the moves he played do not go together well.
and then you make out of the desperation this move d5, which by all means feels just wrong. I mean,
Yeah,
black is not ready to meet this, and the queen
The
f2.
feeling is like this shouldn't work, yeah.
Right.
So queen goes to f2 and
Rook e6.
let's see. Okay, rook e6.
So what about e5 immediately?
Yeah, there is e5 immediately, but maybe he's ready to go to e8. There is, wait a sec, how is he going to keep the pawn after queen g? Same knight.
Still knight e8.
Same knight e8.
And then you lose the pawn on d5.
And then you take on d5, yeah?
Presumably, unless we are missing something. No, you're not. It's a free pawn.
Yeah, looks terrible.
I mean, c takes on d5, knight e5, rook e1, and you can even take with the rook.
yeah, you take with the rook because the knight on e8 is hanging, yeah?
Right, right. Well,
So queen g3, is there any... Ah, well, knight h5 at least attacks the queen, but then I go queen h4. Look, that's a sneaky move. Attacking the knight and the rook as well. So the only move black can play is knight back to f6, and this means
And now you play e5.
white just has queen h4 for free, and then you play e5, win on the spot once again, because... Yeah, you can take on g7 here.
yeah, so we can show it on the screen. e5, rook e5, and queen g3 with a double threat. Queen takes on e5 and queen takes on g7, checkmate.
Yeah. Queen here and here.
Okay, I mean, black could give up the exchange, rook f5, knight f5, but with such a terrible knight on c8, it actually...
Yeah, that's the problem. It's still like dead lost, right? I mean, in some positions you could say, yeah, I can at least fight, but here there is no fight because still g7 is hanging, h6 is hanging.
Yeah, it reminds me the sad rook of Grischuk on a3, right? He positioned the rook early in the phase, rook a3, b3, and there it stood for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
So I'm not even sure what will be Mamedyarov's reaction to queen g3. Will it happen on the board?
But queen g3 loses material immediately.
You mean wins material?
I mean loses for black.
Yeah, black.
Right.
Seems to be forced to part with some material after queen g3. So indeed, seems to be a very nice move. But there is, of course, there is possibility that Maxime will find something that is even stronger. That's also possible. So we'll see how this unfolds. I believe that's a moment for us to, to take a short break for some ads, and then I believe I'll have a little bit longer break, and you'll come back with the guest in the studio.
Right. We'll be seeing you real soon. We are back in the studio. We have a very special guest here, Nikita Meshkov. Hi, Nikita, good friend of mine and colleague in the Latvian national team, who is a grandmaster himself and last year's Latvian champion. And well, Nikita, have you been following this tournament recently?
Yeah, sure. It happened that I played the tournament in Amsterdam, and then I came to play Tal Memorial, so unfortunately it's my first time over here in the last day, or probably one of the last days, but I have followed the whole tournament, and I wanted to say that from the spectators' point of view, it looked extremely interesting. I believe. How it was for you as a commentator?
Well, it's definitely an amazing experience sitting here with the Grands and with this possibility to analyze their games. And we try not to criticize them too much, but at least today there's something strange going on, like yesterday, because normally at this level you do not expect that players of such caliber, they sort of collapse very quickly, and essentially this is what we are seeing. But perhaps we will look at this game very shortly. Which is your favorite game so far in this tournament? I imagine there must be a few.
There was plenty of interesting games. Basically, I focused mostly on the matches. There was a few matches which was extremely interesting. For instance, in the first round, when we had two Armageddons at the same time, and the funny thing was that I turned on live stream, and I joined the right moment when it started. So I was so amazed that in first stage in Moscow there was no
there were no Armageddons, right?
No.
I do not remember, and we were having this joke here in the studio that there were two Armageddon games going on simultaneously, and we were suggesting even that you need to split screens to be able to follow them at the same time.
Yeah, actually I thought you will do in a different way, like one game and then another game. Well, from spectator point of view, it should have been the best choice, I believe.
Well, yeah, anyway, I mean, these were fantastic matches, and we witnessed two Armageddon games, and as it happened, there were no more Armageddon games in the following matches, but right now, this game, it does feel that it's not the best day for Shakhriyar, is it?
It looks that his nerves just collapsed.
I think so.
It's the only point why it happens how it is, because actually I believe when I joined for the first time and checked the position after the opening, let's say after move 13 or
right, we can very shortly check it, I believe.
Yes, even after they exchanged light square bishops, I thought black's position is absolutely fine. To be honest, I also analyzed this system in Italian with pawn on a5. I believe probably even we had some game with...
Between each other?
Yeah, I think so.
Might be. But I don't think I ever played a4 myself.
But the point is, like, we're just fighting for the space, and it looks just absolutely equal. Well, obviously, black has to be very precise and still control white's possibilities to push the pawns in the center, but still it's absolutely fine. And the next 5 moves just changed the game 180 degrees. I was so shocked, I was so amazed. And especially Shakhriyar showed absolutely astonishing, amazing chess in this tournament so far. So what's going on? It's so frustrating.
Well, maybe he started, or well, we never know. He had some health issues in the first round.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it's sort of like unofficial information. We felt that he had solved them, and presumably he increased his level of the play with every single game, because the first rounds were the toughest for him. I mean, he had this very long first round against Daniil Dubov, pushing this endgame with an extra pawn, which he converted into win.
Yeah, I saw that endgame. It was absolutely brilliant technique by Shakhriyar, and that was, I believe, my first time when I joined to the live show. It was very nice.
Right. And then he played this game, I mean, the whole match again, Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Perhaps it was not exactly a convincing game in the classical games, but in the tiebreak he was superior, he managed to take over. And after that, it was a smooth sail. I mean, he was beating confidently Wesley So in the semifinal in the first game, and then in the final he won a very easy game yesterday, so one would expect that, I mean, you are in complete control, and then comes this game. Yeah,
I wanted to add that from that perspective, I believe this format of the tournament is very interesting. It's much interesting compared to the Swiss system, I believe. Swiss system is perfect for the team championships, for the open tournaments, but when we have top 16 players, it's gold, I believe, because have you noticed that Aronian and also Anish Giri, who are both top 10 players, and Aronian used to be second in the world for the very long time, that they were eliminated in the first round. Even
of the first 2 Grand Prix.
The first 2 stages. It's just absolutely incredible. And I believe also Nikita Vitiugov also was eliminated.
Yeah, he was eliminated in the first round of Riga. I do not recall was he playing in Moscow.
I believe he played against Grischuk. But still, this format is not going so great for him till now, but you never know. And it makes it absolutely, absolutely, I don't know how to say, but it looks that might have some changes even in this final as well.
Well, who would have thought? Because we were discussing here in the studio before the match actually started that, I mean, for Maxime, it's going to be difficult. I mean, he lost such a painful match yesterday. I mean, pretty much without a fight. Okay, I mean, Shakhriyar found a very nice novelty, but one would expect you, I mean, work it on the board. And probably Maxime produced one of his worst games recently. It pretty much reminded us the game he played in Zagreb in the last round against Magnus Carlsen, which also the world champion won in the similar fashion. And he also was pretty much crushed very quickly, so you would expect that it's going to be very tough to come back. And there you go, there you have this game.
It's such a dramatic final so far. So,
yeah, I mean, you have to give a lot of credit for Maxime. He's such an amazing and fighting player, so he is going to fight until the end. And I believe at this point, there were a couple of moves played on the board, which was the last moment we left it, I believe, after
So what was the moment when... Okay, so after Rook e6.
Right, Rook e6, while we were talking with each other, we missed a couple of moves. Queen g3, which we essentially thought is going to win material for white. Yevgeny in the studio was mentioning maybe there is something better, but okay, I mean, white essentially wins a pawn.
I think Queen g3 is the most natural one.
Yeah, right, I mean...
So you're just going for the king. You have a clear victim, and so it looks like... The first stage was to put knight on c8, then rook on d8, then knight on e8, so it doesn't look like a perfect strategy.
Maybe he's just adjusting the pieces for the tie breaks already.
Yeah, I mean...
that's a funny joke.
It's a mad joke.
Maybe Shakhriyar won't appreciate it really, but there is this funny joke sometimes floating around that if you're putting all of your pieces on the last rank, you're essentially already putting the pieces for the next match. But okay, I mean, jokes aside, things are definitely not looking great for Shakhriyar in this game. Okay, definitely it's not exactly a disaster, because if he loses today, there's still the tiebreak.
But how you would evaluate chances in case of turn back of Maxime? Like, if he wins, then what are the chances for...
Well, I think definitely now it would be Maxime who is going to hold the psychological advantage, because, I mean, before this game, I thought it is Shakhriyar who is gaining this form with every single game, that he is going to be in complete control. And when he played the Italian and exchanged the bishop, we thought, okay, I mean, he controls everything. Yeah. And then something snapped. I don't know whatever happened. And there you go. We have this position, strategically lost position. White has an extra pawn, and assuming that Maxime is going to be able to convert this game to a win, I mean, he is the favorite now.
But can we expect another turnaround of the final, and tomorrow something new will happen?
Well, probably. I mean, why not? I mean, everything is possible, and these are such a high-class players, and they fight until the end, and they're just getting used that...
yeah, definitely.
They can lose a game or two, and they come back bouncing tomorrow. And even if Shakhriyar is going to lose this game, and it doesn't look very good for him, at least the chances, then definitely he is going to come back. But I mean, still, the game is going on, and at least White is not like immediately winning. He has the extra pawn, he has the better pieces.
So yeah, what I wanted to say that probably from Black side, Shakhriyar made a very practical decision just to give up the pawn. I mean, the whole strategy of playing move 24 rook e6.
Right.
Obviously, Shakhriyar has an amazing skill of calculating lines, so you could not say that. Are you sure? Like Queen g3 and you're staying without a pawn? That's not how it works. Definitely he had counted everything, and the point is, like his position is so. Pieces are not well coordinated, and he has a weakness in the center, so he just made a decision to give up the pawn this way, to play rook e6, and after queen g3, okay, basically he says, I don't need that pawn, but at least, as you already said, I'm not losing immediately. Of course, my position's still bad, but I'm still in the game. Everything can happen, and it shows that it shows character, I believe, that he wants to fight in this game till the end, and so we'll see.
Yeah, but what do you do here? Because, okay, you're down a pawn, and not only that, there are still some mating ideas, and your mood must be really foul, because you must be really feeling depressed yourself the way you are playing this game. And essentially this is exactly how Maxime was feeling yesterday, because he was playing so badly. I mean, he played out the opening not the way he usually plays, and then you are just pretty much disgusted what is this going on the board. So I mean, but okay, you still have to fight on and play the position you have got, because there is nothing better for you.
As I remember, yesterday they played the 28 move game, right? So now we're on the same stage, and we'll see how it will continue.
No, but Shakhriyar definitely is not going to give up so easily.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. So rook d7, and the question is, how do you play here if you are white? So I would imagine, I mean, you want to proceed with the attack. How do you do that?
But I believe white doesn't have to hurry up at all. And by the way, what do we have with time?
Yeah, the time...
27.5 minutes for Shakhriyar. And
if I see correctly, according to the official broadcast, it's 47 minutes for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and 28 minutes for Shakhriyar. Not exactly a time trouble.
It became much better, I believe, because when I saw position after move 22, it was a half an hour difference, and
there you see on the official screen.
Shakhriyar was suffering also.
Yeah, so definitely he is not gonna get in the time trouble. Not that it really matters, because the position is already bad. So what do you think? What might his best chances here, trying to survive? So what would you do?
I think somehow black needs to slow down the game and try to get knight endgame to exchange all rooks and queens, just because of black's king also not the safest one. We have to mention that. And well, in knight endgames, which are very tricky, the chances to hold the game are much higher. So probably some kind of these ideas and the strategies right now are in Shakhriyar's head, and he just tries to weigh how to exchange the rooks, because
yeah, but how to do it? I mean, okay, one pair of rooks can easily go rook takes on e1, that is possible, but what do you do afterwards? I believe there have been a couple of moves, at least I saw. No, there are no moves. No, it was just Maxime made a move, I believe, after rook d7. Yeah, there is a move on the board.
Knight d5 to e3.
Knight d5 to e3.
So I believe Maxime just wants to stabilize, and it looks also natural to exchange one pair of rook and get the control over the d file, which is very, very natural. And then somehow, if he gets d file, then he can try to think about some rook d8, queen d8 moves, and try to box the black's king.
Right. But in terms of the actual move, knight d to e3, it looks a bit strange, because the knight on d5 was supposedly already well positioned and jumping back without any serious reason. Okay, I mean, still white is definitely very much better, but if I was black, I mean, I'm thinking, if I was black, I would probably want to do something about the knight on c8. I mean, I did play knight c8 before that, then I gave up the pawn by pushing d6, d5. So, I mean, how to trade the knights, at least the knight on c8.
Actually, I have another question. How we can still, how we can fight for the d file from the black side? I mean, if you play, for instance, queen c6, because queen's...
right.
Position also not the best one, to be honest. And after queen c6, for instance, queen c6, knight d4.
Yeah, there's this annoying little fork, right?
Yeah. But the point is, at any case, I'm going to fight for the d file, and let's say, I don't know.
Maybe trade the rooks? Let's
rooks?
try it.
Okay.
Let's
yeah.
try it. Okay. Rook takes on d1, rook takes on d1, and now you want somehow to activate the queen. Because presumably rook d8 or rook d7, there is
So I think
something
about
going
queen
on.
b6. Queen b6 makes sense because we're pinning the knight and also
Right.
targeting the b2 pawn.
Now this position should be at least, I mean, I'm not saying that this is possible, but queen takes on d4, queen takes on d4, and rook takes on d4, this should be at least some sort of a success for black, because he is not getting mated immediately. He is still down a pawn, but I mean, he's not dead lost immediately.
But what about queen b2? Can I go for that or not?
I did not even look at it. Queen takes on d2
Yeah,
might
just
be possible. What about queen
concrete
c5? It feels... It feels something, I don't know, it feels so bad, to be honest.
Yeah.
So,
very,
I don't know,
very hard
97 and now just... Can you just take? I think you can. Take, or even rook d7 immediately. It looks... yeah, it looks... as you can see on the screen, rook d7.
Yes.
Yeah, so look, that looks terrible. So that was my imagination, but I would imagine if this position would simplify in this matter, so this would not be exactly the worst scenario
But
for black.
what about queen f2? I mean, just covering the
yeah, probably you're right.
e3 and b2. Then I can go for knight c4, maybe some exchanges. Queen c5 coming.
I mean, essentially what I'm saying is that, okay, white holds this extra pawn, but you just don't want to fall back with all of your pieces. You want to continue to play active. You want to at least target some additional targets, some weaknesses. Because let's imagine, for example, we have this position on the board, and black somehow manages, let's say, trade the queens. Then he manages to trade the knight from c8 to f5. Then he manages somehow by pure miracle trade the knight on e8, and we are essentially entering rook endgame.
Rook endgame is another way how to try to find some salvation. Yeah, I agree. So I don't see any other good ideas for black right now.
Yeah, and now players are still thinking this is obviously not on the board. I believe knight e3 is the last move played, and Shakhriyar has just made a move. I don't think he is going to play queen c6 unless he wants to reach the tie breaks very quickly. What is the last move? Knight c8 to d6. Is
I
this
don't
possible?
like it because
Is this possible?
It looks like
Looks like a deadly pin, doesn't it?
yes. So what I wanted to say that I don't understand Shakhriyar's approach to this game. Like from the very beginning, his position was extremely solid.
Okay.
I'm not trying to criticize him, but it looks just very weird to me. So the point is he's trying to make problems for himself for the whole game, starting from move.
Yeah,
from
move it was right after the opening.
I
Right?
think move 20, because as soon as he played c6, he made a weakness for himself and obviously for Maxime, who was very happy for that. And after that, yeah, so like all these moves, passive moves like knight c8 and all followed moves, it looks just like.
Yeah, and look, Maxime very quickly played knight d4. He did not even try to use the spin, because I would have thought you want somehow try to pressurize black on the spin, something like, I don't know, queen f4 or queen d4 or whatever. I mean, but still, I mean, okay, like you said, we definitely don't want to criticize the players. They had a very long tournament, and also it's very important what I've also noted myself from my players' experience, that I've noticed that everyone is a big expert when it comes to choosing the best continuation, right?
Sure.
I mean, you have this great continuation, then you have the other great continuation. So you sort of like choose whatever feels the right choice. But suddenly, when you are in this bad situation, when everything is so bad and so disgusting, it is so difficult to remain objective. I mean, choose
Sure.
the lesser evil.
And also what we have to mention that for players it's always a distance, and they're playing from one move to another, from game to a game, and they have nerves, they have some emotions, feelings, and their life. And so the point is, I believe Maxime is doing very well right now.
Yeah, he's
so,
played a fantastic game so far.
yeah,
right?
so
I mean,
just no way how to criticize them, and so they're trying very hard.
yet again, dear viewers, let us remind you that we are here sitting and analyzing in the studio without any engines, so please forgive us if we make some kind of a mistake or we don't spot anything. We are just trying to explain it from our point of view, since we are grandmasters and we have some sort of experience on how these best players in the world, they might actually think, and essentially explaining their point of view. Sometimes we manage to do it quite nicely, well, sometimes we are completely off. So, I mean, it is bound to happen. And I believe it's time for a short break. We are going to show you some ads, and we are going to be seeing you shortly. Yeah, thank you, Nikita, for joining you.
Thank you. It was
in the studio.
Very
it was
nice experience.
Right. It was a great pleasure to see you again, and I believe we are going to see each other real soon in the following tournaments in Riga.
Yeah, definitely.
In the meantime, we are going to have a small break. Let's see some ads, and we'll be back with you very shortly.
Enjoy the show.
So I'm finally back, and a lot of things happen, and well, the comeback for Frenchmen seems to be inevitable. What a final we are witnessing here. And yeah, I was not expecting, and even the moment we were criticizing Mamedyarov's play, and I thought maybe there is some hidden explanation, but it turns out there was nothing prepared.
It just feels like an off day for him, definitely.
Yeah, just poorly played game.
Right, I mean, and definitely Maxime was not happy the way he played yesterday, because he was crushed mercilessly in 28 moves, and today essentially, I mean, we are witnessing the same with colors reversed, and it is White who is going for a confident win. That's it.
It is over. It is over, so we can show the last moves that happen in this game. I'm not entirely sure when you left the game, but it seems like just a few moves were played. So knight c2 d6, knight d4, knight goes to g4. Mamedyarov replied with rook d5. I believe like anything you try is bad.
Right.
95, and I don't have any more moves here.
I mean, after
It's all
95, is it just black loses additional material? Because what is the threat?
Well, the threat, knight d7 check. That's...
or maybe rook c7 is the idea.
Rook
Queen
c7,
d8.
and then white comes up with queen d8, yeah. And you're totally paralyzed.
Wow.
I mean, you don't have a single move, it seems.
Well, this is definitely a game Shakhriyar is going to want to forget because, I mean, at which move was it? I mean, after the 15th move, it would seem he was in complete control. Then at least 6 more moves and he is, what, strategically losing?
Yeah, so that was really, once again, somewhere around here. Wait, that's move 12. Yeah, and it seems just yet another, well, boring, nothing special. Gioco piano, they'll exchange pieces and make a draw, which was not obviously the plan for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Rook a d8, a new move. Still, we will have to figure out
what's its value.
Yeah, if it was good or not a good idea. Not a good idea. And yeah, and somehow with those moves like knight d7, queen to a6, Mamedyarov was not sure what exactly he's doing. That's the feeling.
Right.
And around move 19, it feels white is better, but still how to go the distance from move 19 here, which is, well, better for white, but possibly defendable position, I mean, playable position for black. And then move 23, where black was desperate to play d5, which seems to be just a losing move.
Yeah.
We will need some explanation, and I believe we
need to ask a qualified expert on this matter, I believe.
Yeah, so we are getting ready first for an interview with Shakhriyar. Perhaps he will give away some thoughts about this game, and then we will have Maxime in the studio.
Well, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, thanks a lot for joining us after this game, despite losing it. Thanks a lot to be here. Tell us a little bit what went wrong in this game.
Okay, after the opening, I think I play very bad move, knight d7. It looks not good, and I mean, I just got bad positions after the opening.
Now, well, we are heading to a tie-break. How difficult is it to concentrate again for this new situation?
Of course, it's not easy, but it's okay. I mean, of course, I want to win without tiebreak, but he also played very good today, and for me it's okay. I mean, it is not catastrophe. Everything is okay. Yesterday I won good game, and today he. And okay, tomorrow we'll play one interesting match, rapid match, blitz match, maybe. It's very interesting.
You have played, of course, many games with Maxime also in rapid and blitz. What is the score? Who is the favorite?
Of course, in the blitz and rapid, Maxime is playing much better than, I think, in classical chess. His blitz is very good, and also rapid is good. Of course, we play more than maybe 50 games, 60 games, and I don't think about scores. But I know we play every time interesting, and somebody win. Draw is not too much.
So we wish indeed a very interesting match for tomorrow, and good luck, of course.
Thank you, Raj. Thanks.
So the last classical game, the last game with classical time control in Riga Grand Prix has finished, but it turns out it's not the end of the tournament. Well, Maxime, nice to have you in the studio. Seems that you've managed, well, which seemed impossible to many people, and dragged you back in the match. So what was it?
Yeah, like I said, didn't mind positions that look slow at first sight. Like, I mean, this position looks very slow. I had lots of blitz games, I think, with Hikaru. But I decided to play like Wesley did against Ding Liren in BDC World Cup. So it's A4 and bishop c4. Of course, it looks like nothing at first sight because the position is very symmetrical. But this knight stands excellent, and you could try to go knight d7, knight c5. But then because the other knight is on e7, then there's d4 already. So. And here I think just Shah was not, maybe was expecting something much more double-edged. And I mean, I'm only being hypothetical, but maybe he was not ready to play this kind of slow game. And it turns out, I think I didn't like already knight d7 because it just allows me to play d4. I thought, like, maybe rook d8 already is not ideal. Maybe you should start going knight g6, even though that's not the end of the story.
So if he takes right here, it's queen takes or the knight takes?
I think knight takes. Like, I want knight b5 all the time. And but I'm not sure that queen a6 helped because, again, this queen, did an excellent job because it forced the exchange of dark squared bishops and then sort of light squared bishops as well, but which of course is an achievement for black. But now, after knight e3, the queen is again completely out of play, and it takes d4. I was kind of surprised because c takes d4 also looked like a very promising option for me, but then I noticed there was knight f6, and of course I cannot take on c7, and maybe queen c6 or knight c6, knight b4 is next. But anyway, knight takes d4 is very natural again. Knight b5 ideas are in the air, and c6 allows me to play knight df5, and of course this one move later was happening. Was kind of critical. Okay, d1, now d5 is probably forced, and here of course I wanted. I mean, e5 is also very dangerous for black, but this is what I wanted. And again, it's highlighting the poor position of the queen on a6 because, I mean, cd of course is not losing by force, but like queen b3 for instance, and then rook e7. It's some French tirage that went quite wrong for black. The knight is already on f5 or d4. The pawn on a5 is also pretty weak. Generally, you get a5, a4 with black. Now this was going to be and after knight takes d5, c4. Now the queen is out of play. If knight f6, queen c3, and queen g3, and I mean, I calculated a couple of sample lines, but I think it's just over. And I mean, there could be some sort of defense, but anyway, in the long run, it's queen on a6. Even, yeah, I don't see any defense. And in the game, knight c8 surprised me because f3 is just so strong.
So was there a moment when you there are moments during the game when you feel like it's almost there and this game is so important. So when you felt like, okay, now I'm winning?
Well, after f3 already I felt kind of winning, but I was expecting knight e7 as some sort of last defense because you just cannot allow both my knights here, and maybe you're hoping for some knight g6. And of course, I was planning now something like e5. No, you cannot take on f5, you have to go knight d7. And I mean, it's of course early. I can go knight d6, I can even take and play f4, and this also looks very bad. But after rook e6, in this position, I thought, okay, I'm a pawn up, and it's up to me not to screw it up. And after king f8, I didn't see king f8, but I was thinking, what should I do? If I should go back with a knight, if I should. But I thought in the end, I have knight f4, but I thought in the end queen h4 is the cleanest, and the point is, if you take take on d5, I take, and play queen a4, and you don't have queen e6 because of knight g7 check. So after queen h4, I thought it was like forcing either simplification or rook d7, and after now I can play knight d3 because the difference between this and the queen on g3 is after g6 I have queen takes h6.
Oh yeah, so that's important.
Yeah, and yeah, of course queen b6. Now I thought queen f2 is, you know, very safe
and good. Yeah.
But queen d8 also looks very strong. So
Should be a win for white.
Yeah,
definitely.
basically yes. And of course after knight d6, and I was happy to. And here, I mean, this I already knew. Well, I cannot squeeze up because my knight is going to e5, and it's basically over.
Yeah, right. So it seems to be a rather one-sided game.
Yeah, like yesterday.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. That it's very untypical way to reach the tie-break, because in this tournament there have been a lot of tie-breaks where both players like try a little, it doesn't work, draw, then next game draw.
Yeah, I've had some experience in knockouts, and at least in classical games, it's the first time that there's some exchange of blows like this in my games.
Ah, so that's the first time for you, so either you or your opponent equalizes the score.
Yeah, and but yeah, also I think we might be a bit tired because, of course, the level of both games were, I mean, one player played well and the other didn't. So yeah, I hope tomorrow we will be fresh and we'll be ready for some fight. And, you know, of course, the best games are the games where both players play well and give a great fight.
Yeah, so thanks for your explanations, and indeed we are all looking forward to what is going to happen tomorrow. That is, well, seems to be like a fair end, because you, before this match, let's say, both of you played so well, so it feels like well-deserved final, and well, to have this tiebreak perhaps will be like a fair way to establish who is going to win Riga Grand Prix. So thanks again for joining. We'll have the pleasure to see you back in action tomorrow. As all of you guys at home, so don't miss it, 3 p.m., the final day of Riga Grand Prix tomorrow. So tune in, and thanks for watching us today.
See you tomorrow.